There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. Thanks. Please be seated. The first item on the order paper is questions addressed to the Deputy President. Members may press the talk button on their desks if they wish to ask a supplementary question. The first question has been asked by the Honorable M.L. Dunjwa. The Honorable, the Deputy President.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members, thank you very much. The delegates to the 21st International AIDS Conference adopted a wonderful declaration that focused on key scientific advances with regards to fighting HIV and AIDS. They also identified key sectoral barriers to their effective implementation. The declaration calls for access to antiretroviral therapy for all people living with HIV, scaling up of modern combination HIV prevention packages, such as pre-exposure prophylaxis and medical main circumcision. Also, the treatment and management of core infections, such as TB, accelerated research for an HIV vaccine and cure. In addressing the structural barriers to a more effective response, many of which affect South Africa, the conference declared that it was necessary to focus on key populations which are disproportionately affected by HIV. They also decided that we should empower adolescent girls and young women, also challenge and review laws, policies, and practices that discriminate against people living with HIV, and also increase investment in community-led responses that are led by a number of organizations around our country and indeed in many other countries. The South African government was able to inform the conference that as of today, the 1st of September 2016, South Africa will provide antiretroviral treatment to all those who test HIV positive, regardless of their CD4 count. Honorable members, today marks a new era in our country's fight against AIDS, with a view of ending this virus. The new treatment guidelines will further broaden access and ensure that the rights of those that are affected are actually advanced. Already, South Africa has initiated, as many of us will know, over 3.4 million of our people who are HIV positive on antiretroviral treatment. In addition, almost 100% of pregnant women with HIV are offered treatment to reduce transmission in pregnancy, during childbirth, and in the breastfeeding process or period. In addition to the general population, special efforts are being made to reach those key populations most severely affected by HIV. In March this year, as chairperson of SANEC, I launched a special program that will reach up to 70,000 sex workers over the next 3 years. Similar programs are being planned for the LGBTI community, and there is high coverage for prison inmates through the Department of Correctional Services. The Department of Social Development is working with SANAC to address the special needs of drug users, for HIV treatment and prevention. South Africa operates its HIV response with a stringent human rights framework, or within a stringent human rights framework. This begins with confidentiality and privacy and extends through to the rights of people living with AIDS to access all services in the public and private sectors. It includes fair access to medical and life insurance and the right to employment and fair and equal treatment also in the workplace. As honorable members are aware, the success of our AIDS response is guided by the targets that were set up in the National Strategic Plan for HIV, STIs, and TB 2012 to 2016. As we engage in the process of drafting the new NSP, we are calling on all members of the public, NGOs, and social partners to participate by making written submissions to SANAC or the provincial health departments. This public participation process will make sure that the country adopts a well-balanced plan informed by the aspirations and experiences of our people. I hope that all members of parliament will, through their own constituencies, particularly their offices, encourage members of the public to participate in the debate which should lead to the finalization of the National Strategic Plan. And I urge that wherever we are, all of us should find time to participate in this very important process that will guide our response to HIV for the next 5 years. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
The Honorable Dunjwa.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Chair. Thank you, Honorable Deputy President, for giving us such a very important program that has been developed through the declaration in the International AIDS Conference. But I just want to check, as the chairperson of SANAC, are there any systems that you are going to put in place in ensuring that at a provincial level and in the departments that you have mentioned, which are going with the program that is going to monitor that all what you have outlined, everybody is going to benefit, in particular, those young women and men who are in the deep rural areas and also in the farming communities, whom at times are not exposed to these programs due to either issues of work or language, not because of their own making. Thank you, Honorable.
Honorable Deputy President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Yes, at the provincial level, SANAC has structures. The structure that we've got at the national level is duplicated at the provincial level, as well as at the local government level. We expect that at the national level, the Deputy President will chair the body that manages our response to HIV/AIDS, and at the provincial level, the premiers of our provincial governments will be the ones who lead this effort. I'm able to say that all provinces, save for one, have their premiers participating actively as the leaders of this response. The Western Cape is the only one that has delegated an MEC to lead, but in all the other provinces, we've taken the view that these councils at provincial level are best led when the premier, who is the leader of government in the province, actually participates and leads the response. At the local government level, we expect our mayors to be the ones who will lead the HIV response at the local government level. Yes, we are scaling our response, particularly on the prevention side, as much as we possibly can. We keep launching a number of programs, Honorable Speaker, programs that are targeted to vulnerable groups. But we also, through the Minister of Health the other day, launched a much broader one, which is aimed at scaling up prevention in our country. The Minister of Health was able a few months ago to launch a new condom, and I brought some examples here. A new condom which is called the Max condom. The Max condom is in response to what a number of people were saying. They were saying that the other condom that had been introduced by government did not smell so well, and it made a noise whenever it was used. Now, through scientific development, we were able to develop a new condom which is called Max. The Max is for maximum pleasure, maximum protection, and it does not make noise at all. And it comes in different flavors. If you want a grape flavor, you can get a grape flavor.
Point of order, sir.
If you want an apple flavor, you can get an apple flavor.
Point of order, sir.
Here's a point of order. What's the point of order, Honorable Filtane?
Who cares to listen to noise at that time?
That's not a point of order, Honorable Filtane. Honorable DP, are you through?
No, just to make a response that the issue of noise, Honorable Speaker, was reported by users. The people who used to use the old condoms approached the Ministry of Health and said, these make noise. Could you have condoms that make less noise? So members, please help yourself. We've now got condoms which we expect we can all use for maximum pleasure and protection. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Chewane.
Thank you, Speaker. Deputy President, I think it's commendable that our people from today will be able to access antiretrovirals, regardless of their CD4 cell count. Some of us have been making that noise as early as 1999, and because we knew and understood that it will benefit our people. But there is a problem that has not yet been addressed by government, the problem of stigma. We still have young women in rural areas who are subjected to stigma. And we receive calls every day from different communities because people are not comfortable in taking ARVs in clinics where they stay because they are worried that when they get home, their condition is being discussed everywhere. And they are also not allowed to go to a clinic which is a little bit further to collect ARV therapy. But the most important question, Deputy President, is that HIV incidence is higher in young women between age of 14 to 25. And that is worsened by the phenomenon of the blessers, which is not new. It has just changed name. It has been sugar daddies. And they look like big people who have got big tummies who have been doing this for a very long time. What has been the government doing to assist us with the question of the blessers who are spreading HIV infection in young women? But also, is there a plan to make sure that women who are subjected to stigma in rural areas are able to access antiretroviral therapy in any clinic of their choice? I thank you.
The Honorable Deputy President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I'm rather glad that the Honorable Member has asked this question because the challenge that we have in our country is the whole issue of stigma. People are afraid to come forward to get tested. They are afraid to come forward to declare their status because of stigma. But in response to this, we've launched quite a number of stigma reduction programs. It is not like we've been sitting and doing nothing. There are quite a number of programs that have been launched. And the good thing is that these programs are launched by SANAC SANAC, which, as you know, is a combination of a number of entities, both community-based entities, medically trained people, professors, researchers, government people, and traditional leaders, sports people, and all that. And through these stigma reduction programs, we're hoping that we will be able to reduce the issue of stigma, but the issue of stigma will be effectively reduced when all of us talk more openly about HIV/AIDS, when all of us become active participants in the fight against HIV. Now, the issue of the area, the vulnerable group, which is young girls, and it is really adolescent girls, as well as young women, who are the most vulnerable and who research has found that the incidence of AIDS has been increasing. That is, infection has been increasing amongst them more than in any other group. We've identified this as a problem, as a real challenge. And to this end, we launched a massive program with our partners, and it's in fact a multi-billion rand program where we are hoping to respond to this problem that now prevails in our country, where young girls and young women who now get into relationships, and it's been happening over a number of years, but now we're finding that the incidence of infection are rising more and more. As older men now target young girls and young women, and we're finding that they infect them, and the percentage rise is becoming much, much, much greater. So we're responding to that to raise their level of awareness, but in doing so, we're also focusing on those who target these young girls, because they too need to be given attention. But the program that we have started and launched is also being propelled forward by young people themselves. It is being modernized in the way that young people know other young people can respond to. So many of the things and the sub-programs that we've got in that program were designed by young people, and we'd like to believe that it is going to have an impact because young people themselves are active participants in this program. So my response, therefore, Honorable Member, is that we are doing quite a lot to, one, reduce stigma, and two, to ensure that we reduce the level of infection amongst the vulnerable groups, and particularly adolescent girls as well as young women. Thank you very much.
The Honorable Singh.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Just to follow up on the Honorable Deputy President, I think the moot question is, are we doing enough, Honorable Deputy President, to create awareness, especially among these vulnerable groups? If one looks at reports in the Ratlo municipality, 3,000 young children underage were impregnated and had to drop out from school. In another report, it is said that over 90,000 teenage pregnancies are recorded in the country every year. And my colleague has mentioned the issue of blessers. We can deal with the science of how we treat HIV and AIDS with antiretrovirals and other medication that's available. But Honorable Deputy President, would you not agree that we need to go back to basics, where young children who are at school, they are in a captive audience in school, even in preschools today. What kind of education is being imparted to them in schools so that they know about the fact about HIV and AIDS and all the dangers that are associated with it? They know about teenage pregnancies, etc. I do not believe that enough is being done at that level, Honorable Deputy President, and the Department of Education and Health with their social workers. In terms of UN AIDS, we should have about 200,000 social workers in South Africa, but the Department of Health says 40,000 are enough. So the question is, are we doing enough? And will you motivate that in our school curricula, we have a subject, guidance counseling. We had it when we were in school. Can we not introduce that again in our schools? Thank you, Honorable Deputy President.
Honorable Deputy President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. In fighting this pandemic, we can never do enough. We actually have to constantly be working very hard to extend various programs. And we've launched quite a number of programs. And in this regard, I think one needs to applaud the work that is being done by the Department of Health, particularly by the minister who's leading, and his deputy who are leading the Department of Health. Dr. Aaron Mutsoledi has been doing unbelievable work to make sure that we address this pandemic. And he's been coming up with program after program, clearly getting all those approved through SANAC. And I think we are rather fortunate that we're not standing still, and we've got a very good department that is leading our response to this. Yes, all of us read with some shock the reports that we got with regard to Ratlo. I'm told it's not as high as 3,000. The police who have been there and have looked at the situation quite closely inform us that 3,000 is a sensationalist number. It's far less than that. But that does not mean that we do not have a problem. And quite a bit of it is also driven by poverty. It's also driven by the economic situation that confronts our people. And HIV, AIDS, and poverty go together, and we need to address that. And when you say, Honorable Member, that we should go back to basics, I couldn't agree more. We do need to go back to basics and address the problem in its totality. We also need, at the school level, to raise the level of awareness to a higher level. Yes, schools are doing quite a lot, and the Department of Basic Education is doing quite a lot of conscientization work, but much more needs to be done. We are at work and doing quite a lot. And one of the things that stands us in good stead is that in SANAC, we've got the best structure that you could ever hope for in fighting HIV/AIDS, because we've got tens and tens and tens of formations that affect or impact the lives of our people. They are working with us in SANAC, and through them, we are able to spread the message of awareness. And one of the things, obviously, that we need to do is to strengthen our health system, something that the Department of Health is in the process of doing. So I support you and I agree with you when you say we need to do more. Much more still needs to be done, but we are not standing still. We are doing quite a lot already. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable Kubisa.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Deputy President, on a broader scale, and especially if we do a comparative analysis, it is reported that not less than 60% of the HIV infected are within the sub-Saharan Africa. And most of these are found among the youth of our country. Can you, Honourable Deputy President, speak to the milestones that were possibly achieved with regard to spreading a message among our youth? Because it appears the message of abstinence and also the youth caring for themselves does not find resonance, especially among our youth. Thank you.
Honorable Deputy President.
Thank you. I think in response to your question, yes, indeed, sub-Saharan Africa carries the highest burden. And as it turns out, South Africa, we carry the biggest burden in the world. We've got almost 7 million of our compatriots infected with HIV. That is a very high number. And it's a challenge that we all have to respond to. And how do we respond to it? We respond to it, yes, in a formal way and also in informal ways. In the formal sense, we're responding to it through SANAC structure. In a formal way, we're responding to it through the work that we are doing through the Department of Health and indeed other departments as well, because the fight against HIV should not only be relegated to the Department of Health. All departments, from social development, from education, indeed all others, need to be involved in the fight against HIV. And our provincial structures particularly our provincial governments, the local governments, also need to be involved. Now, obviously, ABC, abstain, be faithful, and condomize, has been the main theme that we've been preaching around. But in the end, you'll find that abstinence does not really have that resonance that you want. You therefore have to come up with other strategies. These are strategies that we have come up with to respond to these challenges. At the school level, our objective is to make sure that we keep, particularly the young girls, which I should have referred to earlier, young girls in school. They must stay in school. And when you read the report from Ratlo, you'll find that many of those young girls have stopped going to school. And they become easy prey to either the blessers or whoever you can think of. Now, our objective is to keep the young girls at school. That's a key objective because they are a vulnerable group. So we are targeting them, and we want to ensure that in reducing further infections, we target a number of groups. Sex workers is another, young girls is another, and indeed, also the men who infect these young girls are another group that we need to target. So our target, in as far as prevention is concerned, is a broad spectrum type of targeting. We come up with programs that are aimed at a number of people. Now, in the past few years, we made tremendous progress, but it would seem like now we are regressing. And this is precisely why our response in coming up with so many programs is a direct response to this regression that we are seeing. And we believe that with all the programs that we have come up with the work that is being done, we should be able to stem the further increase of these infections. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
We now come to question number 10, which has been asked by the Honorable Leader of the Opposition to the Deputy President. The Honorable the Deputy President.
As part of government, business and labor interactions that were started by government, and particularly President Zuma, the President announced on the 9th of May this year a number of short-term interventions aimed at boosting economic growth and confidence in our economy. One of these measures was the establishment by the private sector of a joint fund for small business development. Progress with these initiatives is well advanced. A board has now been put in place, a chief executive has been appointed, and the fund will soon open for business to address precisely the issue that the leader of the opposition has raised in his question. While the establishment of the fund is an initiative of the private sector, there is a wide range of complementary initiatives of government aimed at boosting job creation. These include the public employment programs, the Jobs Fund program, the Industrial Policy Action Plan, partnership with organized agriculture and rural development initiatives. Understanding that most job creation takes place in the small and informal business sector, government is directing significant resources and efforts towards the SMME development. Through the initiative like the Black Supplier Development Program, the Cooperative Incentive Scheme, and the Shared Economic Infrastructure Facility, the government is providing financial and other direct support for emerging business. The National Gazelles Program or initiative, which the Ministry of Small Business and Cooperative has launched, is taking an innovative approach to small business development by identifying high-growth businesses. Selected businesses will be supported with an integrated package of benefits, business opportunities and incentives, combined with practical business training with strong private sector involvement. And this talks to the whole process of incubating small and medium enterprises, which the Ministry of Small Business and Cooperative is beginning to perfect in, because they've identified this as an initiative that can help and support small businesses. We're also using the business, as I said, incubation model to assist startup businesses during the critical first few years of existence so that they become more sustainable and profitable. These remain high priority programs of government and are contributing substantially to job creation. We are also working actively with business, organized labor, and other stakeholders to address economic growth challenges and to find effective mechanisms of creating jobs. Other initiatives led by the Minister of Finance and Mr. Jabu Mabuza from business include joint roadshows by government, business, and labor to explain our country's economic growth program, and the collaboration that has been taking place between business, government, and labor is a collaboration that is definitely going to continue bearing fruit. One of those areas is focusing on youth unemployment. The business community, having been given a challenge to respond to the challenge of youth unemployment, they took the bit in their teeth, and they are now coming forward with revolutionary proposals that are going to lead to ensuring that we get hundreds of thousands of young people into internship, into businesses so that they can learn the world of work. Significant and tangible progress is being made on an ongoing basis. And clearly, we need to proceed along this road so that when the economy begins to pick up, and as we utilize all these initiatives to inject more life into our economy, we have, if you like, an army of young people who are well-skilled, who will be able to take our economy to greater heights. Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable, the Leader of the Opposition.
Ke a leboga, Speaker, dumela motlatsa mo Presidente. I think I want to welcome your remarks on the fact that some of the work of setting up this fund was designed primarily with the view of averting what is a critical recession that we face. And I think listening to your remarks, I heard you say that some of these have been led by the Minister of Finance, Ntate Pravin Gordhan. So what I think is absolutely critical, Deputy President, I think both you and I can agree that establishing a fund and many of the initiatives that you've put forward about stimulating micro-enterprise, making sure young people are on board, can only survive in an economic climate that is particularly stable. And I think the point that you've made, and I want to request of you, because there's this war, obviously, between Treasury and the Presidency. And in fact, to use your own words, Deputy President, you said, we can't be operating with a government that is seen to be at war with itself, which I agree with you. So what I'm more fascinated in learning, if funds like this are going to succeed, and the point that you've also made, which is to say, they must depend on private sector involvement, and companies such as Future Growth are part of that. So what I want to know is, Deputy President, what are you going to do to ensure that this war can be put to bed? Because surely we can't continue in an economic climate such as this one. The war between the Presidency and Treasury can't carry on. So how are we going to ensure that it is stopped, and that ultimately, like a similar crisis you've described around HIV, we can deal with the crisis of unemployment, which 9 million of our people can't find work, and they must come through micro-enterprise. So what deliberate steps are you going to take to ensure that we stabilize our economy and stop this war between Treasury and the presidency?
The Honorable, the Deputy President.
Clearly, the creation of a conducive climate for investment to take place and for our economy to grow requires that all entities in our country, both state entities and non-state entities, should work well, because the democracy that we have in our country is a multidimensional democracy. It also has an impact, it also includes non-governmental entities, it includes governmental entities, and the events of the past few weeks have been a concern to many South Africans. Many South Africans have been concerned about that, and we've called for all those who are involved to take care that whatever they do should not lead to destabilizing our economy, should not lead to getting people to believe that the government is not functioning well. And we've also called on all and sundry from making wild and sensational statements about whatever they may perceive is happening, because it is the statements that also exacerbate the situation. And we like to believe that the processes that are now underway to deal with this matter will put this matter to bed, and we will be able to proceed forward in a way where there is decorum, in a way where one entity of government is not at war, as I said, with another entity of government. So that is our objective, and we would like to see government entities functioning well. But similarly, we would like to see all other non-governmental entities that may feel tempted to join the fray, resisting from doing so or desisting from doing so that we can have a situation of proper decorum as we proceed to manage affairs in our country as well as the economy. But more importantly, Honorable Leader of the Opposition, coming to your question, I would say that yes, we're taking all measures to ensure that the economy of our country grows, and indeed, yes, the Minister of Finance and a number of business leaders are involved in setting up structures. This is not the only fund that is being set up. There are quite a number of initiatives that the Department of Treasury and indeed other state-owned and ministries that are involved in the economy are involved in to make sure that we do continue focusing on job creation, focusing on the growth of our economy. Thank you very much.
The Honorable Shibambu.
Thank you, Speaker. You know, the biggest challenge to start up businesses, it's lack of access to shelf spaces where they can trade their products or where they can supply those who put things on shelf spaces to retail. And mostly so because black fronters are now facilitating entry of multinational shelf spaces owners into the townships. In your declaration of interest here in Parliament, you have got a mall in Diepkloof. There's no black person there who's trading anything in any of those stores there in Diepkloof. We are building a mall in Toyando called Taban. We have got interest as well there. You might deny, but we have got interest there. All the black role players who are trying to enter into those shelf spaces are being refused. We have got interest in McDonald's. The suppliers of McDonald's are not black start-up businesses that could at least get an opportunity to build their own businesses. How should we trust you, a person who is leading a counter-transformation agenda against small businesses? You are wiping them out of the face of existence because you are taking your businesses, partnering with multinational corporations to the townships to wipe out startup businesses. How should we trust you that you're going to create jobs? Because the things that you're doing are actually working against the jobs that are much needed in our communities. How can we trust you with such an attitude? Thank you.
The Honorable, the Deputy President.
I don't know whether that is a question that Honorable Shibambu wants me to respond to, because, no, you don't want me to respond to it, because you have already made a judgment, and having reached a conclusion, you are not asking for a response from me, because you have already concluded. You say, for instance, I own Tabani Mall. I don't. There's a rumor like that, I don't. So what you are saying, it would be good if you were sure about the facts that you are putting forward. It is always sensationalized, things that are sensationalized, and I'm able to say that, I'm not going to respond to the personal issues. I'm going to respond to the more broader issues. And the broader point that you are making, the broader point that you should be making, Honorable Shibambu, is the involvement of monopolies in our economy and how monopolies have been able and continue to strangle the growth of our economy. This was also identified by the representative of the IMF. And a few weeks ago, he said the role that monopolies play in the South African economy impede growth. And that should be the issue that we should be focusing on and find solutions. Honorable Shibambu, a person like you should be able to come up with solutions and say, this is what we need to do, rather than launching personal attacks. Now, you are a bright person, absolutely bright. And some of us respect you for your brightness. You always come up with some good ideas, and this is an area where you need to be coming up with good ideas rather than to be launching personal attacks. We've got to all get involved in moving our country forward and stop the process of looking back and attacking others. Come up with solutions that we can all act on. Thank you very much.
The Honorable Esther Reason.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Order, honorable members. Can we allow Honorable Esther Reason to ask his supplementary question?
Honorable Deputy President, it seems strange that the Honorable President used in his speech on the 9th of May the renewable independent power producers as a model for attracting investors and promote growth. And rightly so, which is a matter of fact attracted 193 billion rand in foreign investment and created many jobs. But since then, the CEO of Eskom, Mr. Brian Molefe, has put a stop to further IPP programs. My question, sir, the President of the country promote IPPs, but a responsible state entity cancelled the program. How would you explain this misalignment, Honorable Deputy President?
Honorable Deputy President.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. It is not correct that the IPP programs have been cancelled. Eskom, in doing their own sums, because they are an original generator of electricity. In doing their own sums, they have been finding that in actually reaching agreements with the IPPs, it is possible that the cost of generation on buying the power they've been getting is a little higher than what they can generate it for. And they have been raising that type of concern. And it's a debate, it's a discussion that needs to be engaged in. What is really happening is that the cost of generating electricity through IPPs has been coming down over a number of years. Solar energy, wind, water, or hydro rather, has been coming down. And we need to look at exactly where the inflection point is, particularly when you compare the two. Now, clearly, clearly the IPPs are still a credible program of the government. The government has decided that we should proceed with IPPs, and ESCOM as the generator, or the original generator on the other side, is expressing its views. This is a matter that is going to be discussed, and we are going to be able to reach a medium ground so that we find a level of consensus. So I don't believe that one should be too overly concerned because the IPPs are still the program of the government. Thank you very much.
The Honorable Chance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good afternoon, Honourable Deputy President. Back in April, myself and two colleagues from this side of the House had the opportunity of meeting Mr. Gore and Mr. Joffe, who are the setting up specialists of this fund from the private sector. And they told us that there was going to be a matching fund of roughly 1.5 billion rand from government and the private sector, and that the private sector had already come up with the money. So it's now September, and it's good to get the update from you, sir, but we're still waiting to see where the extra 1.5 billion rand is coming from government. I also received an email this morning from an advisor to the fund who said that the fund is very much business-led and the government will be a shareholder but will be treated like any other shareholder. So the question then is, Deputy President, is the government satisfied in being a shareholder like any other shareholder if it is putting in 1.5 billion rand into the fund? And where is that 1.5 billion rand coming from, and when is it coming? Thank you.
Honorable Deputy President.
Mr. Gore and Mr. Joffe have been working on this architecture of this fund. And as I said in my preliminary response, that quite a lot of work has gone into this, and the actual final proposals still need to be actually finalized within government. And the issue of co-investing is another issue that has to be looked at by government. And they are acting as business in the typical way that businesses work. They run very quickly and fast. Within government, our processes need to go through a number of iterations, and that's precisely what is happening now. So there hasn't been full finality within government. Clearly, the issues such as an investment which will match the private sector's investment is going to be a budgetary matter. It has not come through to the budgetary process, budget office, nor has it come here. So you can already see that there's a little bit of misalignment with the way that they work very quickly and ourselves, because we manage public money, and we've got to make sure that it's within budgetary processes, budgetary limits. So all that is being looked at, and I have no doubt that this wonderful initiative they've come up with is something that can take the development of small and medium enterprises forward. We are really excited by the way in which the business community has responded to this crisis. The other one, as I said, is youth unemployment. They've also come up with fascinating, innovative ideas, and this is going to be largely under their own steam. So that too is being discussed. It's going to be finalized, and when we're ready, when we're truly ready, we will be able to make an announcement. But at the same time, we're keeping on discussing with them so that the enthusiasm that is there in the private sector to help small and medium businesses to develop is not lost. So all this is still part of the broader framework of working on initiatives and proposals that we hope will be able to move the envelope forward. Thank you very much.
Question number 11 has been asked by the Honorable Tsapa, and I now give the opportunity to the Deputy President to deal with that next question. Honorable Deputy President.
Honorable Speaker, nearly 7 years have passed since the United Nations General Assembly declared the 18th of July Nelson Mandela International Day in recognition of the founding father of our country and our democracy, particularly in recognition of his contribution to the culture of peace and freedom. It is worth recalling what Madiba himself said at the time when this was done. He said, "We are humbled by the decision of the United Nations to recognize 18th July as Nelson Mandela International Day. It is our wish," he said, "that the day be used not to honor an individual, but rather to remember the millions who have contributed to the struggle for freedom throughout the world. The best way," he continued to say, "is to commemorate these struggles of the people everywhere, to work with and within communities, and to make this world a better world." This is a day for active service, that is the 18th of July, in which South Africans join others across the world to perform acts of goodwill and sharing in support of people who are vulnerable or marginalized. This year, South Africans rolled up their sleeves and became involved in a wide range of activities and projects, from spending time with senior citizens to painting facilities such as early childhood centers or schools or planting food gardens. It was a galaxy of wonderful activities that many South Africans got involved in. It was a wonderful scene to see. These activities enable participants to broaden their human experience and social conscience. As South Africa, we are particularly honored to host recently the 21st International AIDS Conference in Durban on precisely the day that Nelson Mandela was born, the 18th of July. This coincided with Nelson Mandela International Day. The International AIDS Society consciously chose the 18th of July for the conference to commence as a mark of honor and respect for our international icon. The conference paid various tributes to President Mandela's contribution to the national and global campaigns for prevention, treatment, and the elimination of stigma. Nelson Mandela International Day encourages the development of caring, compassionate, helpful, empathetic, and ethical communities. The values that underpin Nelson Mandela Day should form the foundation of the society we are seeking to build. In this regard, we wish to commend the young girls who, in the last week of the Women's Month, rose against an injustice which undermines their identity, their humanity, their own cultural rights, and their own histories. I'm speaking here of the learners of Pretoria Girls High School, Lawson Brown High School in Port Elizabeth, and other institutions of learning. If the country is to truly honor the legacy of Nelson Mandela and to build social cohesion in our country, we must eradicate all forms of cultural chauvinism, be it black or white. We need to make sure that every day becomes a Nelson Mandela Day for all South Africans. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Papa.
Mandiphakame ndibulele kakhulu somlomo. Sekela mongameli welizwe lakokwethu. Ndiyabulela ngengcaciso enhle kangaka. Nendithembayo ukuba abantu bakokwethu phaya emakhaya bakuvile. Noko ke sibona lemisebenzi saye siyingqina umhlekazi. Ndinganabisa umbuzo ngelithi Ingaba ke njengokuba ucacisile lo msebenzi wokunceda abangathathi ntweni ngabo bangconywana kunabo iyafikelelana kwabo inene banezinto ezinkulu kakhulu kunabanye. Ngokokubona kwakho ingaba abantu abanezinto nezinwe bayakwazi na ukufikelela kweli phulo lihle kangaka nelililifa likazwelonke esinikwe yintandane ubawo uMandela. Okwesibini, kungaba mhlawumbi njengoba ubala iminyaka kuzaba khona ithuba apho abantu balibalayo ukuba abalingani bazibone kuqhelekile ukuhlala ndawonye njengokuba namhlanje kukho amadabi kweli lizwe, wars on toilets eKhayelitsha, wars on hair ePitoli. Maninzi kamanye amadabi aliwayo ngabo bangathathi ntweni besenziwa ngabathethe ntweni. Kungumdla omkhulu ukuba lento ingangena engqondweni, internalize, ide ibe lisiko neculture into yokuba akuvumelekanga ukuba ndidle iphalitshi wena udle inyama mihla yonke. Ndingake Mongameli ungandinabisela ukuba likhona na elithemba. Enkosi.
Honorable Deputy President.
Honorable Speaker, thank you. Diabulela, Mama. There is a maxim that goes, unto those to whom much is given, much is expected. And I think this is the maxim by which Nelson Mandela lived. And in responding to the question that came very much strongly to mind to me, that when we look at Nelson Mandela International Day, we actually need to be saying, what did Nelson Mandela stand for? What he stood for was to try and promote the livelihood, the rights of those who were less off. And if you do that, that's how you begin to build, to have cohesion in a nation. And that is how you begin to demonstrate what Nelson Mandela stood for, which is being compassionate, being empathetic, and being a person who feels the suffering of others. And that is what Nelson Mandela was all about. And Nelson Mandela International Day calls upon all of us to do as Nelson Mandela did, in word and in deed, and to demonstrate our care. Now, there's a lot of poverty in our country, there's a lot of suffering in our country. The honorable member asks, do we have a situation in our country where those who have much are able to care for those who have nothing? And I'm not so sure that we've reached that stage in our country. It is a nirvana which Nelson Mandela wished for. And it is something that if we get every day to be a Nelson Mandela Day, we can actually move in that direction. And I raise this because it's important to remember what the father of our nation was all about. He was all about just that. He abhorred people who were suffering, the suffering of people. He wanted to make sure that all people do lead a decent life. And he was very revolutionary in his approach in as far as these things are concerned. So I would say that maybe there needs to be some dialogue in our country of how, as South Africans, we can finally get to grips with what Nelson Mandela stood for. The compassion, the empathy that Nelson Mandela represented, particularly when we look at the suffering that many of our compatriots are living through in this day and age. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable Mutau.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Thank you, Deputy President. As a matter of interest, this day has always been very special to me because it also happens to be my birthday. As you have indicated, you know, when this day was declared an international day, there was high expectations in the country, lots of enthusiasm for this day. We spoke of nation building, we spoke of the Rainbow Nation. However, in recent times, the economic, political, and social developments in South Africa have resulted in the setting in of a demoralized and sometimes something we call compassion fatigue, with the voters clearly indicating in recent times that they are ready for change. And Deputy President, you referred to this thing twice, that every day should be a Nelson Mandela Day. And that's why I asked this question, because I agree with you. What steps is the government taking to implement the values espoused by former President Nelson Mandela on a daily basis, not just on the 18th of July, to improve the lives of those persons who are less fortunate than ourselves, especially in the face of high levels of service delivery failures and, most important, and again you referred to this, unemployment of crisis proportions amongst young people of this country.
The Deputy President.
Honorable Speaker, I am honored to hear that Honorable Mutau does agree with me. So we don't have much that we differ on. But the question of what is government doing to demonstrate its compassion and its empathy with the majority of our people in South Africa. And I can say that this government is just all about that. What the government has been doing since this governing party has been in office has been about demonstrating its compassion and its empathy to the people of our country. The progress that has been achieved, which is undisputed when it comes to changing the lives of millions and millions of South Africans, bears testimony to this. This government has been able, Honorable Mutau, to lift millions and millions of our people out of abject poverty to a much better situation. Stats South Africa does attest to the fact that poverty levels have indeed come down. The delivery that this government has embarked on at a cost of billions and billions of rands has been about demonstrating that compassion. The almost 4 million houses that have been built have not only brought joy, but have also brought dignity to the majority of our people. Compassion, Honorable Mutau, is also about dignity. It's also about observing and respecting the human rights of ordinary people. The work that I was talking about with regard to HIV/AIDS, the 3.4 million people who are on ARVs today, the majority of them would have died already. Do you remember we lived in a country where we were burying our people almost every weekend in their thousands? That has come to an end. That shows and demonstrates compassion. Many other things that have been done in the interest of our people to lighten the burden of poverty and of a difficult life have been done because this government has sought to put its people first. This Batupili approach that we have had has actually been practiced in reality. Today, our country is very different from the country that we inherited from the apartheid misrulers of this country. We are a much better country, and we come across as a caring country. What we now need to do is to take this work forward and to demonstrate greater care by improving the livelihoods of our people more and creating jobs, and that we are on the way to doing without any fail. This government is a government of the people that seeks to improve the lives of our people as a whole. Thank you very much.
The Honorable Van der Merwe.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. To you, Honourable Deputy President, thank you very much for the answer you've provided. I think you will agree with me that ordinary South Africans, through NGOs, continue to play a crucial role in assisting the vulnerable sectors of our society every day, not just on International Madiba Day. And you will agree with me that they often deliver vital services on behalf of the state, where the state fails to deliver. But NGOs are facing very difficult times, Honourable Deputy President. Funds are drying up, and there seems to be a type of animosity emanating from government towards NGOs. And in fact, earlier this year, during his budget vote speech, Minister Mahlobo said, and I quote, "There are those who are used as NGOs, but they are not. They are just security agents that are being used for covert operations," unquote. Can you therefore today confirm, Honourable Deputy President, that this is the official view of your government, that NGOs are enemies of the state? And can you confirm or deny whether your government is planning a clampdown on NGOs and the non-governmental organizations? And also, Deputy President, will you take it upon yourself to mend the fences with some of the NGOs who no longer feel as valuable government partners in bringing about socio-economic change and social cohesion in our country? I thank you.
The Honorable Deputy President.
Honorable Speaker, thank you. And Honorable Van der Merwe, I cannot confirm what is not true. It isn't true that the government sees NGOs as the enemy of the government. We work with NGOs in almost everything that we do. When you look at policing, we have community policing forums, and many NGOs participate in those. So how can we even begin to think that NGOs are enemies of the state or the government? It is through NGOs that we are able to do and perfect our work. And in many ways, the people who work in NGOs, the participants in NGOs, are the ones who do really effective work, working together with their government. And we know that many NGOs are having serious challenges and problems with regard to funding, and some of those NGOs are actively supported in a number of the programs that they execute by government and also by government funding. So this government is pro-NGOs. This government works with NGOs. I was giving you a very good example of SANAC. In SANAC, the entire body of SANAC is made up of NGOs, other than government and, say, business. And it is through those NGOs that we are able to do the work that we are doing, and it is through those NGOs that we were able to turn around our response to HIV and AIDS. So I'm able to stand here and say, we want to continue working with NGOs, and we will support NGOs because many NGOs do absolutely valuable work. There may well be other NGOs that have different agendas, and it's not all NGOs. And those NGOs that have different agendas, some of them may even be, working on behalf of other people who are enemies of our country from outside. Those are a different category of NGOs. But in the main, the NGOs that we have and work with here in South Africa are in the main loyal NGOs, and we want to continue working with them. And we'll assist them wherever they encounter challenges and difficulties with regard to fundraising. And that is what we do actively. As chairperson of SANEC, working with the many NGOs that are part of SANEC, that is what my office does. Whenever they encounter difficulties with funding, we intervene on their side to give them assistance and support so that they can get funding and continue doing their work. So we are pro-NGOs, we are not against NGOs. Thank you very much.
The Honorable Matthias.
Thanks, Speaker. Honorable Kapa has raised an important question, but there is a context to this question. And that context is found in the set of values and principles that Madiba stood and spent his life for. And these principles are self-respect, respect for others, respect for the rule of law, and the respect for the constitution of the country, and commitment to moral uprightness and ethical conduct. Your party represents an antithesis of what Madiba stood for. Your party is keeping in office a president, a man who is an affront and a cause of collective dismay against the collective conscience of the people of South Africa. It keeps in office a man who has failed to uphold, defend, and protect the Constitution, a man who has over 780 charges of corruption hanging over his head, a man who has used public money to build for himself a castle, a man who has been rejected by South Africans during municipal elections. He has been rejected because South Africans say unequivocally they cannot be associated with a man in their good conscience who is a social scum, a man by the name of Jacob Zuma. The question to you, Deputy President, is by keeping this man in office, who has become a social scum, in keeping with the values and principles that Madiba stood for?
The Honorable, the Deputy President.
One of the things that Madiba taught us is that however much you may disagree with someone, however much you may abhor someone, the language that you use in describing another human being should be in keeping with the language that you would like to be used when people describe you. Now, I say this, honorable member, because I would have wanted to know. It's a pity I can't ask you a question. I would have wanted to ask you. No. It's my turn to answer questions. No. It's my turn to answer questions. It's not his turn to answer questions. How he would have felt if somebody, in describing him, described him in the terms that he has referred to President Zuma and say he's a scum. Because Madiba taught us that however much you disagree with everyone, always respect another human being. Always treat them with dignity. And that's all I want to say. Thank you very much.
Honorable Speaker.
The Deputy President has answered the question, Honorable Malema.
Speaker, on a point of order.
What's the point of order, Honorable Malema?
No, it is unacceptable for Deputy President to avoid answering questions. You did that with Floyd, you patronizing and avoiding questions deliberately. The question is very clear. Leave the side issues, because maturity amongst others requires of you to rise above and not want to stick to
Honorable
the pettiness
Malema,
of other members, because you are a deputy president.
I think, Honorable
you avoided answering Floyd's question because you patronized him and said all sorts of things. Now the question is the president in keeping with what Madiba
Honorable
stood for?
Malema.
And you have not answered that question. And you do that skillfully so.
Honorable
because
Malema.
the negotiations have taught you to dodge questions. And it's not going to happen.
Honorable
you have to answer
Malema.
questions. Please, Honorable Speaker,
Honorable
let the
Malema,
Deputy President answer
may
the question.
I ask you to take your seat? We are now passing on to question number 12, asked by Honorable Nchaisa to the Deputy President.
Speaker.
Honorable Shibambu, please take your seat.
Speaker, can you address one principal question?
Honorable Shibambu, you are on your feet. Honorable Shibambu, to start with, you are on your feet and you want me to pay attention to you when you are actually inappropriately on your feet. in the House.
Can you please note me before the
No,
next
Honorable
question is answered,
Shibambu, please take your seat and let's continue to finish the question time to the Deputy President.
But what is the purpose
Honorable
of this question session
Shibambu,
if the
please
questions are
take
not
your
being
seat.
answered?
Honorable Shibambu, please take your seat. The question has been asked by Honorable
Speaker.
Nchaisa.
Honorable
And I
Speaker.
will now ask the Deputy President
Honorable Speaker,
to ask,
can
to
you please
answer the
recognize
question.
me? Honorable Speaker.
I am not recognizing a person who's on her feet.
But I've been raising my hand. You are not
No.
recognizing me.
No.
You are simply ignoring my hand.
Don't shout.
But you are
Don't
ignoring
shout.
me. You are
Honorable
ignoring me.
member, don't shout.
Honorable Speaker, please recognize me.
Take your seat.
No, I need your recognition.
Take your seat.
Because this matter, we spoke about it in the programming
Honorable
committee
member,
this morning.
you have no right to be on your feet and addressing the chair at the moment.
On a point of order, Speaker.
You can't raise a point of order on your feet.
Okay, on a point of order, Speaker.
What's the point of order?
Thank you very much. Speaker, we had a problem yesterday. We had a problem yesterday about ministers who were not answering questions.
No,
And it
honorable
will be
member.
very difficult to resolve that problem of ministers when the Deputy President is doing the same thing that the ministers are doing.
Honorable,
we had the same problem yesterday. of
Honorable
ministers who have been
Chewane,
very
I'm not
evasive
aware
when
of
they
the
were dealing with
problem you had yesterday. And in fact, if there's a problem brought to my attention, I will attend to it.
No,
I
but
will find ways.
our challenge now is that the Deputy President is very evasive to our questions. He's not
Honorable-
dealing with the questions that they're asked. And we need direction from you, Speaker, because I know it's agreed that when questions are asked in this Parliament, they must be answered to competently.
Honorable Chewane, the direction I'm giving is that we proceed with the questions to the Deputy President. And I would like him
Honorable
to answer
Speaker.
the question raised by Honorable Nchaisa.
Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Malema.
Yes.
If it's your, please, Honorable Malema, take your seat.
No, just
Let's start by
recognize me.
you. Let's start
Yes.
by you taking your seat.
Okay.
Honorable Malema.
Honorable Speaker, yesterday when we had a problem, then the presiding officer then referred the matter back to the minister and said, do you want to answer the question because there is a concern that you didn't answer the question? And then the minister then answered the question for the second time. I'm asking that you take it back to the Deputy President to ask if he will want to answer this question of the President if he's living up to the values of President Mandela, even when the court has described him in a manner that Honorable Matthias has explained to you. Please, Speaker, refer the matter back to the Deputy President. Maybe we'll get an answer.
No.
And if he doesn't want to answer it for the second time, then we proceed to the next question.
Honorable Malema, I am proceeding to ask the Deputy President to answer question number 12. Question number 12, Honorable Deputy President, please.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. My engagements with the government, as well as other formations in the Kingdom of Lesotho, in my capacity as the SADC facilitator, have been limited to the regional mandate of promoting political and security stability. I have not had discussions on matters pertaining to issues that impact on the bilateral relations between the South African government and the government of Lesotho, as my role is that of a SADC facilitator. Matters pertaining to bilateral relations between South Africa and Lesotho are dealt with by the Department of International Relations and Cooperation under the umbrella of the Joint Bilateral Commission on Cooperation. The South African Police Service, the South African National Defense Force, and the Department of Home Affairs are involved in mutual efforts to deal with cross-border crime that affects citizens on both countries. Continued political security instability in Lesotho has a negative impact on both our economies, and it is therefore in the interest of South Africa that a lasting solution be found to the challenges that Lesotho is going through. I thank you.
The Honorable Njaisa.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Also linked to the social and economic relations between these two countries is the alleged illegal old age pension grant that is being received by the people of Lesotho from South Africa, having applied and having paid some monies to Home Affairs officials and successfully applied for the pension grant. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Honorable Speaker. Also linked to social and economic relations between these two states is the alleged illegal old age pension grant that is being received by the people of Lesotho from South African government, having paid some monies to Home Affairs officials and successfully apply for these old age pension grants. Mr. Deputy President, have you ever thought perhaps about addressing this matter together with the Kingdom of Lesotho? If not, perhaps how do you think, how do you think this now will come to an end? Or what is the position? Or what is it that you have got in plan to bring an end to this matter? Because it is robbing our country a lot of money. So we're losing a lot unnecessarily as the country. Thank you very much.
The Honorable Deputy President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The matter that the Honorable Member is raising is a matter that is in discussion between the government of Lesotho and the government of South Africa. And indeed, our Minister of Home Affairs has been involved in extensive discussions with his counterpart in Lesotho, up to and including having gone to Lesotho to streamline the permit system that Basotho who are here should have, and to make sure that that is properly handled. So that matter is being addressed, and at the appropriate time, I am sure, without any doubt, that the Minister of Home Affairs and indeed the South African government will be able to announce something in due course. Thank you very much.
The Honorable Raputi.
Dimasia Rebo, Deputy President, and Happy Heritage Month. Thank you for the excellent work that you are doing as a SADC facilitator and the work that you are doing across the globe to ensure the peace and stability is being realized. 2 days ago, Deputy President, you just came out from SADC Summit in Swaziland. And what were the outcome of that summit? And secondly, as South African, we are tightening our security and international relation as a part of security cluster. Where is the process of the border management authority? I thank you.
The Honorable Deputy President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The summit that just ended in Swaziland, at which President Zuma was appointed or elected the chairperson of SADC, with the next summit going to take place in South Africa in 2018, decided on a number of things, including countries such as Madagascar, how to consolidate the peace effort, the DRC, as well as Lesotho. And on Lesotho, the summit noted the report from President Nyusi, the chairperson, outgoing chairperson of the organ, as well as from the facilitator, and urged and called upon the government of Lesotho to move forward with regards to implementing the recommendations of the Pumapi report, Commission report, in relation to making sure that the security and constitutional reforms do proceed forward as earlier decided by SADC, as well as the investigation around the death of Brigadier Mahau, as well as making sure that the issue of General Kamudi is also resolved. So in broad outline, those were the issues discussed, as well as making sure that the leaders of various opposition parties that are in exile should be encouraged to go back to Lesotho. And we've been in discussion with them on this on an ongoing basis. So those were the broad and general decisions that were taken by the summit. In relation to clearly the other issues of ensuring that we stabilize the situation in Lesotho, we continue to work and we continue to focus on meeting with various entities. Each time we go to Lesotho, we meet with NGOs, with the government, with the king, and a number of others, including the churches in Lesotho. And we like to believe that, yes, indeed, progress is being made on an ongoing basis. We should reach a situation in Lesotho soon where there will be full stability. And I think South Africa's interests are best served when Lesotho is at peace with itself and where we are able to relate to Lesotho, Lesotho that is at peace, where there are no major political ructions and issues. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
The Honorable Mokhalapa.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Deputy President, you would agree with me that this is part of the bigger problem of the domestic political challenges in Lesotho. As a facilitator, you have referred to the issues. Now, there are two key issues that came up from the SADC Commission of Inquiry that are still outstanding, and they have missed the deadline, which you have referred to, which is the removal of Brigadier Tlali Kumale and the return of opposition leaders. Now, if these issues are not resolved, already you've missed the deadline as the facilitator. They have a tendency of denting your legacy as the facilitator. So you would be regarded as a failure in terms of facilitating this, because these are two key issues that hasn't been resolved. So, Mr. President, Deputy President, what is the new deadline? When will these issues be resolved? And what steps are you taking as the facilitator to ensure that you stick to the deadline and these two key issues are resolved for the political stability of Basotho? I thank you.
The Honorable, the Deputy President.
Honorable Speaker, one, in doing all this work is not involved in a contest of that you're competing to have a legacy or not. You're just doing your work to make sure that you assist with the peace process in a country. And that is what peacemaking is all about. It's not a competition, it's not a contest. What we are involved in is to seek, as I was saying, to install more permanent stability politically and security-wise in Lesotho. That is being worked on. I had a meeting with the leaders of the three political parties who fled Lesotho to come to live in South Africa for a while. And we discussed at great length what it is that will make them go back to Lesotho. Taking them back to Lesotho by force is not one of the things that is available to us. In the end, they have to go back to Lesotho knowing that there is a conducive climate for them to return to Lesotho. They must be convinced that that is the case. And I'm sure that we are getting close to that. Yes, having missed a deadline and another deadline is a matter where you are trying to get as many people, many organizations as possible to work together to achieve a particular end. And when it comes to the departure or the retirement of General Kamudi, this is a matter that is also in process. The government of Lesotho was able to brief SADC summit and inform the summit that this is a matter that they are working on, they are finalizing it, and in no time, I'm sure that we will get some news out of this. So it is work in progress. Lesotho is work in progress, and we will be able to achieve a success soon. Thank you very much.
The Honorable Mbata.
Honorable Speaker, thank you very much, Deputy President. At the heart of the relationship between the People's Republic of South Africa and Lesotho is the manner in which we have consistently treated the people of Lesotho. The people of Lesotho help build our mining industry and our mining sector as early as the 18th century. What is your government doing, in particular, to prevent private companies in South Africa in treating the people of Lesotho as cheap labor consistently, in particular, the mining companies? The first one, the mining company where you had shares, is the biggest exploiter of the Lesotho people. What is your government doing?
The Honorable Deputy President.
One of the good things, Honorable Speaker, thank you. The good thing is that we have a labor relations dispensation in our country through which the working people of our country are able to join trade unions, whichever they are, that are able to represent their interests, they are able to represent their rights and promote their rights. And this is a matter that is best left with those unions. But having said that, the government of South Africa is one of the leading governments in the world that has not only promoted, but has advocated and installed the best rights for working people in our country. This is the best government that working people in our country have ever had. And through the rights that they have and enjoy, they are able to get their unions, the organizations that represent them, to represent them effectively, to make sure that, yes, where they are exploited, they are able to raise these matters in both a formal manner and in an effective way to make sure that exploitation of working people does come to an end. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
We now come to question number 13, asked by the Honorable Lisoma. The Honorable Deputy President.
Honorable Speaker, the government's education and job creation programs for addressing the challenges highlighted in the 2016 Community Survey report are anchored in the National Development Plan as well as the Medium Strategic Framework. The three key levers of implementing the NDP are enhancing economic growth, enhancing the capabilities of South Africans, and developing a capable developmental state and an active citizenry. With respect to education, our matriculation pass rate, and many people have forgotten this, has improved from 58% in 1994 to 71% in 2015. To improve access and equity, around 70% of learners are now in no-fee schools. To further enhance the quality of our educational outcomes, we are working to improve teacher development and track its effectiveness. To reduce the dropout rate in the FET phase, use technology to improve teaching and improve oversight and support to schools by education districts. Access to higher education and training opportunities for young South Africans almost doubled between 1994 and 2014. Over 1 million students are currently enrolled in higher education institutions. Government is building on this progress by creating greater access to quality post-school education and training through the NSFAS and monitoring changes in university fee structure. We are revising the policy governing the disbursement of skills levy to support the post-school training and education system more effectively. We are strengthening the role of TVET colleges in providing theoretical training for artisans and ensuring that key government departments continue to work with business to ensure the transition of qualifying students into the labor market. Job creation is intricately linked to economic growth, which is driven by diverse factors, including availability of a skilled and capable workforce, labor stability, and investor confidence. House Chair, government is making important progress in the implementation of the 9-point plan to turn around our economy and to increase employment. Government continues to focus its incentive programs and other support mechanisms on labor-intensive sectors such as clothing, textiles, leather and footwear value chain, agro-processing and business process services. The Interministerial Committee on Investment, chaired by the President, is coordinating 40 priority investment projects covering areas such as agro-processing, energy and infrastructure, and manufacturing services. These projects are expected to have significant economic impact. The other thing is that they can be implemented in a short space of time. Government is working with business and labor on a number of measures to grow the economy, create jobs, but more especially for young people. Government has a plan to improve skills and create employment. We are encouraged by ordinary South Africans who are rolling up their sleeves by starting small businesses, initiating early childhood development programs, recycling waste, and support high school learners with their work. And indeed, we are a country, House Chair, that is at work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy President. The first supplementary question is to be asked by the Honorable Lesoma.
Masibonge mhlali ngaphambili. Sekela mongameli ohloniphekileyo. Amaplani mahle mangabe ekhona kodwa aba yingxaki ukuthi iphepha elibhalwe kuwo mangabe nga-implementwa kufana ukuthi udlale ngalelo phepha obhale kulo. Besinxusa la mongameli ohloniphekileyo uthathe lendlu neSouth Africa yonkana ukuthi ngabe ziphi izindlela kumbe uhla ozawulisebenzisa ukumonitha ukuthi lamaplani osuwabekile emahle enjalo uzokwazi ukwabheka ngawusokhozi ukuthi ayalandeleleka ikakhulukazi ezemfundo. Mangizibongele.
The Honorable Deputy President.
House Chair, thank you very much. We are able to say that these plans that are set out in our National Development Plan, our medium-term strategic framework, are plans that are monitored on an ongoing basis by government as a whole. Every department is aligned to implementing the plans that are put in place, not only in education, but in every other discipline that you can think of. Every department has to craft its own strategic plan towards implementing the National Development Plan and the medium-term strategic framework. And what we do, we identify a number of outcomes that we want to see. And we have up to 14 outcomes. And each outcome has its own sub-outcomes that are monitored by the department in the Presidency of Monitoring and Evaluation. Now, Cabinet on an ongoing basis monitors all these implementation processes with a fine-tooth comb to see where we are moving forward or where we are lagging behind. And where we are lagging behind, we drill deeper down to find out exactly what is holding us back. And we deploy people and resources to make sure that what we have set out in our plans and have sharpened through our outcomes is actually done. Education is a case in point. Where we have identified weaknesses both in basic education and higher education, we are able to address those. And some of the progress that we are seeing is as a result of the monitoring and evaluation that we are focusing attention on. So, in as far as the National Development Plan is concerned, yes, Honorable Member, uthi lama plan abhaliweyo angapheleli kuphela kulama phepha abhalwe kuwo inyani leyo nathi senze ukuthi sibe sure ukuthi lama plan esinawo angabi ama plan abhalwe phansi kuphela abe ngama plan ezinto esizawuzenza nyani. Lo hulumeni uyaqhuba, uyasebenza, wenza sure ukuthi yonke into esike saxelela abantu ukuthi sizawuyenza ngenyani siyayenza. Nangoku sisaqhuba siyawenza umsebenzi ukuthi impilo zabantu zibe ngcono siqhubekele phambili. Ngiyabonga.
The next supplementary question is to be asked by the Honorable Kubisa.
House Chairperson, thank you very much. Deputy President, contained within the same report is the dire need to create permanent jobs. And there is a concurrence between Statistics South Africa and HRC that unemployment stood at about more than 26% in the last quarter of June. And about 15 million people are uneconomically active in our country. Almost 2.5 million are discouraged in seeking jobs. And one thing that militates against all of this, creation of permanent jobs, is the issue of labor brokerage. What is it that can be done to deal with the whole thing of labor brokers, because they are not doing our country any good? Thank you.
The Honorable Deputy President.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. Yes, indeed, the issue of unemployment is a major problem, in fact, a headache, and should be a headache for all of us. And it is for this reason that every government department's objective is to see the extent to which we can create jobs and to create a conducive climate in which jobs can be created. That is our key objective. The issue of labor brokers was brought up very, very strongly by our trade union movement. The Department of Labor went to a great extent to address this issue through legislation, through whatever regulations that they have. It does still pose a problem, particularly in the trade union movement. It is something that is still being discussed. Whenever we get an opportunity to interact with labor, we discuss it so that we can find a permanent solution. Lesi islonda esifanele ukuthi siphole. Sizayenza sure ukuthi siyaphola ngelinye ilanga. Ukuthi siphole, ukuthi umzimba ube umzimba ophile kahle. Thank you.
The Honorable Milam.
Thank you, House Chair. Deputy President, according to the 2016 Community Survey report, the proportion of youth in the Vembe District Municipality grew by 2 percentage points between 2011 and 2016, and now stands at 38.3%, or more than a third. The municipal website puts the unemployment figure amongst the youth in that municipality at 50.6%. Less than 20% of the people there have, over the age of 20, have matric passes. Now, given that this is the district municipality in which the town of Vuwane is situated, where 26 schools were burned to the ground in service delivery and demarcation protests earlier this year, and where effective education and job creation programs are desperately needed, what previous programs were implemented here, and why do you believe that these new programs are different from those previous programs which failed so miserably?
The Honorable Deputy President.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. I must immediately say I'm not au fait with the actual programs that were implemented in the Vembe district. It is a matter that I would like to take advice on, rather than stand here and waffle about something that I'm not well informed on. So if you can take a rain check on that question, I'm quite happy to have it addressed because I would need to look more closely and introspectively about all those types of programs that were implemented in the Vembe district. But more broadly, when it comes to the Vembe district, which is no different from any other district in our country anyway, the challenge of unemployment is not only in the Vembe district, it's all over the country. And indeed, some of the programs that we are implementing, that we have come up with, are programs that would also be relevant in the Vembe district as they would be relevant elsewhere. And particularly coming to the youth. When it comes to the youth, we are focusing our attention on skilling young people, making sure that, one, young people stay in school and get their qualifications. Now, what happened in the Vuwane area when 28 schools were torched is a true setback to us. But fortunately, the Department of Basic Education has responded in a very positive way to make sure that schooling can continue, albeit having stopped for a while. Now, we are focusing attention on that, and we would like to resolve that problem. The other issue is, once young people stay in school, and most of those young people who go to those schools largely go to no-fee schools, and we want to be able to support them. But in that area, there are also TVET colleges. We are supporting TVET colleges, and we're opening more TVET colleges, and we want those young people in that area to go into those TVET colleges and also to go to the university. They have 2 universities there, about a third one to be built, the medical one, 2 universities that they can go to, and therefore we want to focus on skills, and that those young people having acquired skills should, through this program that I was talking about, which we are crafting with the private sector, to be able to get thousands of those young people into the world of work, where they will be able to either get learnerships, where they will get internships, where they will be able to learn how the world of work functions. And we find that many of those young people who get into those programs, be they learnerships, be they internships, be they further training to acquire whatever skills they could have learned theoretically at TVET colleges, they are able to be placed in jobs, in more permanent jobs. So they'll start off either as learners or interns, but in time, once the skill of work has been learned, they're able to easily get jobs. So this is one of the many programs that we have available. And may I add that various departments of government, science and technology, and a number of others, including state enterprises and Department of Energy, are involved in promoting youth employment. They are involved in focusing on how we can skill our young people. the running theme in our government is around young people and making sure that, yes, young people do get the skills that are required, and finally, that they are able to get work. Now, if you ever thought that was waffle, it's nice waffle which you are enjoying. Thank you very much.
The next supplementary question is to be asked by the Honorable Nsimang.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. And I would like to add my voice to those who complimented the Honorable Deputy President for the plans that are going to be introduced. However, I would like to say that in the workplace, one needs the support of both the employer and the employee for these plans to succeed. Now, my information is that in the tripartite alliance itself, there is a member, namely COSATU, who has rejected the National Development Plan.
Honorable Member, you're running out of time. Can you ask the question, please?
The question is, how will the government persuade COSATU to promote these plans that are so beautiful? I'm asking this mindful.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Your time has now expired. The Honorable Deputy President.
Now, the National Development Plan is the overarching plan that will take us to 2030. This plan has been broadly accepted by the people of our country. And in looking at the plan itself and the actual components of the plan, you'll find that many people have no truck or argument with the plan. And in our interactions with COSATU, we have found that many elements of the plan is precisely what everyone would like to see being implemented to take our country forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy President. We now move to question number 14 that has been asked by the Leader of the Opposition to the Deputy President. The Honorable Deputy President.
Yes. The Constitution provides, Honorable House Chair, that members of Cabinet are accountable collectively and individually to Parliament for the exercise of their powers and the performance of their functions. That is what the Constitution states very clearly. And it is for this reason that the attendance of members of the executive to their parliamentary responsibilities is regularly discussed at cabinet meetings, as it was discussed at yesterday's cabinet meeting. As leader of government business, I present a report at each cabinet meeting on the response of members of the executive to written questions, as well as to their ability to come to Parliament and answer questions. As a consequence, we have seen a marked improvement in the rate of responses on written questions, even as the number of questions have risen quite exponentially. In the past, fewer questions were being asked. Now we have more and more questions. And Honorable House Chair, this is one of the tasks that I execute as leader of government business, to look at the ability of members of the executive to answer questions in written form. There have been moments when some of the members of the executive have had too many questions that they hadn't answered, but I can tell you right now without any equivocation that the questions that members of the executive have to answer have now reduced considerably. And this has happened through engagement that I have had with members of the executive, encouraging them, egging them on to answer the questions that have been tabled to them. And I have seen, as I said in the statement that we issued last year, that I've seen great improvement amongst my colleagues in as far as answering questions is concerned. Now, this includes encouraging the availability of members of the executive to answer questions for oral reply in both houses. Now, where there have been weaknesses and lapses, I have, as leader of government business, taken this up and addressed it with members of the executive and found solutions to make sure that we execute this task that we are enjoined to execute by the Constitution of our country. The results that people would like to see are results that, one, with regard to written questions, the result is really, really great. And you, as members of Parliament, through you, Honorable Chair, House Chair, you will have found that many members of the executive have been answering the questions that are written. Now, when it comes to the members' attendance here, we have listened, we have heard, and we have discussed it. We have discussed it. I'd like to give members, in quite an honest way, this reply that the attendance, the issue which has been raised by members of Parliament on all sides, may I add, not only on the opposition side, but also on the governing party side, is something that we have taken to heart, and we are going to make sure that the attendance does indeed improve. That is a promise that I make. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy President. Is there a supplementary question, Honorable Leader of the Opposition?
Thank you so much. I think, I don't know whether to welcome that it's been discussed regularly or not, because actually I think, Deputy President, it's time for us to take action. This is not the first time this has happened. The reality behind it is that this administration has constantly avoided accountability, whether it's the Guptas, al-Bashir, we can carry on and list many. But I want to hone in fact, there are two prime examples. Part of the line item of the Deputy President is to say, you'll meet with the leaders of opposition parties. This also has not happened. But the other question that I want to put forward to you, Deputy President, is that Minister Nosiviwe, the Minister of Defense, has often failed to appear in this house. And when you ask her to appear, she says no, she'll appear before the Joint Standing Committee on Defense, which even after you've asked her to do that, she doesn't. And there is one fundamental question. There is an acquisition of a private jet for 4 billion rands. We have asked her the question in this house. She simply has failed to answer. Now, I want to know, Deputy President, from you, what is actually the South African government's position from the presidency on the acquisition of this jet? Because we can't get the minister to answer. Please, can you answer it for us? Because I think that money could be better served for our people at home who are still waiting for houses and delivery of services. As a brief, Deputy President, please. Thank you very much.
The Honorable Deputy President.
Honorable House Chair, I don't know what the question is, and I thought we were discussing specifically the question that the Honorable Leader of the Opposition raised in relation to attendance, in relation to answering questions, and
Order, honourable members. Let's give an opportunity to the Deputy
relation
President.
to accountability to Parliament. Now, if that is what we are addressing, I would like to repeat what I said, that the matter has been discussed, and you say you don't know you should have confidence in that. I'd like to invite you, Honorable Maimane, to have confidence. You are a religious man. You are a religious man. Have faith. Have faith. It's important to practice your faith even in Parliament. And this is the time when you should. Now, as I've said, I have seen incredibly good performance on my colleagues' side in as far as answering written questions. And this has come about through discussion, through encouraging all of us to act, to adhere to the responsibilities that we have. Now, this has been going extremely well. Now, I'd like to say that in relation to attendance, be it whoever's attendance, we are going to be seeing a greater level of attendance. And let me add very quickly that many of the colleagues who have not been able to come to Parliament have always had really cogent reasons. They've had really cogent reasons why they have not been able to come. All members of the executive know that they have to be in Parliament, and when they have failed to do so, they've always have cogent reasons. But this matter, House Chair, has been raised by all sides of our Parliament, and we've heard, and it is going to be addressed. Now, coming to the matter that the Honorable Maimane raises, which he correctly says is in the purview of the Minister of Defense, is a matter that the Minister of Defense will be able, during her question time, in her question time, she will be able to address this matter, because there are quite a number of issues that she would like to communicate to this Parliament in relation to this. Also, the sensational reports that have been bandied around, she wants to have an opportunity to address precisely this matter. So she will come and address it herself. Thank you very much.
The Honourable Abrams.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson, Honourable Deputy President. Thank you very much for a very comprehensive reply. We have full confidence that you will implement the regulations of Parliament and the rules of Parliament. We absolutely have no doubt that you will do that. Our members of the executive are generally very, very serious about their accountability to Parliament, both in written and oral questions, Deputy President. Where challenges arise, we should identify and correct and not complain. My question to you, what other additional Parliament tools will be utilized to make sure that the third and fourth Parliament term will be better? Thank you.
The Honourable Deputy President.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair, and thank you, Honourable Member. I think we would like to see this Parliament, and indeed the next Parliament, being a Parliament where we're able to get all of us to play our role, be it members of the executive, in terms of executing their constitutional duties and responsibilities, in terms of attendance, in terms of doing their work and answering questions. That is something that we would like to see. And the rules of Parliament have now been amended as to have a greater focus even on members of the executive in as far as executing their tasks is concerned. We will want to abide by that. And we just hope that all members of parliament will be able to rise up to the challenge to make this parliament a house of really robust debate, a house where there are less or no insults at all, where we are able to intellectually exchange views, sharpen our wits, and able to see where a good point is coming from even the opposition, and on the governing party side be even humble and brave enough to say, that is a good point, we will take it up. That is the type of parliament that I would like to see. And when I said Honorable Shibambu is a clever man, I meant it. Honorable Malema think I was being facetious or patronizing. I meant it because we expect that all members, and at times Honorable Shibambu comes up with really great propositions, really good ideas. And those good ideas are best articulated with less insult, with less rowdiness, in a forthright manner so that they can be taken up. This House owes a responsibility to the people of our country. We need to be the house of debate. We need to be the house that observes rules. Yes, rules must be observed by all members of the executive as well as members of parliament itself. So let us all rise to the occasion and be true and proper members of parliament that the people of South Africa can be proud of. Thank you very much.
The Honorable Low.
Dank u, voorzitter. Meneer Ramaphosa, in uw kabinet het u ministers wat nooit opdaag vir die vraesessie nie. Twee van hierdie ministers is meneer Rob Davis en mevrou Angie Motshekga. In feite, hulle is net vandag hier omdat jy hier is. Het u enige disciplinaire aksies teenoor hierdie ministers geneem? En het u ook in hierdie disciplinaire aksies gesorg dat wanneer hulle vrae kom beantwoord in hierdie parlement, hulle antwoord die vrae opreg en met die antwoorde wat die vraag verdien? And did you also ensure in those disciplinary hearings, Mr. Ramaphosa, that your ministers don't come here in late and patronize us and give us waffling answers like you have done today? Thank you.
The Honorable Deputy President.
Thank you, House Chair, and baie dankie. Vir 'n minuut het ek gedink dat jy gaan nou 'n baie mooi proposal op die tafel sit. Maar unfortunately, you come up with an insult at the end. But let me say the following. No, let me say the following. Let me say the following. The question is, have I either discussed, disciplined, and so forth members? The key answer that I've given, I gave at the beginning. I said, we have heard what members of parliament are saying. We have heard, and said, baie mooi geluister. Ek het baie mooi geluister. And after luistering, after luistering, jy moet nou baie mooi luister. Nadat ek geluister het, after luistering, ek het tyd geneem om met my colleagues te praat. We've discussed this matter. We've discussed it thoroughly, and we have said, members of parliament, as jy nou mooi luister, ek dink jy luister nie nou nie. We've said, members of parliament have raised a concern. And this concern has been raised on both sides. on both the opposition side and as well as on the governing party side. So this matter cannot be just dismissed, and we cannot play politics about this matter. It's a matter of great concern. And I even went on to say, I have on occasion come to Parliament, and I have found quite a number of the front benches and the second row empty, as you have raised the matter. So the issue that you have raised has been heard and has also been raised with our colleagues. And I'd like us to watch this space before we come up with the hard disciplinary measures which Mr. Maimani suggested, which you are also seeking to see happen. Let us watch this space. I am absolutely certain, as I saw with the answering to written questions, there is going to be greater performance when it comes to attendance and presence in Parliament. So let us watch this space, all of us. Baie dankie.
The Honourable Steenhuisen.
Thank you very much, House Chair, and thank you very much, Deputy President, for your answer. And I'm glad you take this matter as seriously as we do. Deputy President, you'd agree that as a leader of government business, this matter of attendance has been raised with you repeatedly over the term of the 5th Parliament. It's very clear that people are starting to wonder if your office is not the supermax of government. Because much like those packets you were waving around in the House earlier, you're protecting the executive from their parliamentary accountability. Yes, except your max leaves a very bitter taste in one's mouth when ministers don't attend. Allow me to say that it's very clear that your discussions with the ministers are not working, and we have serial offenders like Minister Davies, Minister Batabile Dlamini, and Minister Mochecha, who just simply miss back-to-back question sessions and miss their constitutional obligation to account to this House. I would like to put a suggestion before you today, seeing you're in the mood for suggestions. Would your office consider financial sanctions for ministers who do not attend the oral question sessions in the House? So if they're not going to listen to your words, perhaps if you hit them in the pockets, they may take heed a lot quicker. Thank you.
The Honourable Deputy President.
Thank you very much, House Chair, and thank you, Honourable Steenhuisen. As I was saying, we've heard and we've discussed this matter, and I'd like to get this opportunity to make sure that what we are putting in place now is given an opportunity and a chance to work. Before we get to the type of measures that Honorable Maimani was suggesting and what Steenhuisen is suggesting, I'd like that we make sure that the attendance, as we have seen with the written questions, improves, and I have no doubt in my mind that it is going to improve. But similarly, I've heard what Honorable Steenhuisen is saying, and my own approach now is to say, let us proceed with what I have said here. I've spoken to members of the executive, and it is going to get better. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy President. Honourable members, that concludes questions to the Deputy President. I thank the Honourable Deputy President.
House Chair.
Yes, Honourable Member.
Thank you very much.
Why are you rising, Honourable Member?
I rise in terms of Rule 137.10a and Rule 138.4, subsection 4.
Yes.
There is a matter that was raised yesterday by Honorable Steenhuisen when Honorable Minister Shabangu came in, walked into the House, and later on had to attend to questions that were for the minister in the office of the President, Minister Khadeb. And the issue there was that there was no communication to this House about the matter, the absence of Minister Khadeb. Now, the reason why I'm raising these issues because the presiding officer at the time promised the House that she was going to come back to us about the reasons why that absence was not communicated to this House, right? And now that didn't happen yesterday. I intended to raise this matter before the House was adjourned yesterday, but it was adjourned while I was still on my feet trying to raise a point of order. The point I want to make, why I'm citing these rules, House
Can
Chair.
we get to the point, Honourable Member?
I am going to get to the point.
Yeah,
Chairperson.
but I didn't give you an opportunity to make a speech.
I'm
Just
not
say
making
what
a speech.
the issue is, please.
I'm not making a speech. This matter is related to what the Deputy President was talking about here.
But you realize we have concluded questions
No,
to
I'm
the
not
Deputy
asking a question
President.
I'm not asking a question to the Deputy President.
Okay.
Can you allow me to finish, please?
Get to the point, please.
Yes, the issue is here. If you look at Rule 138(4), subsection 4, what it does say is that it does not make it obligatory for ministers to inform Parliament when they are not going to be able to make it to a session, right? It only says if a minister is not going to be able to make it, they can only tell a colleague. So it means it treats it casually. However, if you look at 137(10)(a), it, to a certain extent, make it obligatory for a member of Parliament, say during an oral session, if a member of Parliament has a question on the order paper, they have to inform presiding officers. Now, in trying to resolve this issue about attendance, we have to make sure that we put a system in place as well to deal with how we communicate with Parliament on issues where ministers are not able to make it to Parliament, so that we comply fully and properly with Section 92, subsection 2 and 3 of the Constitution in terms of holding government ministers and the executive accountable.
Thank you, Honourable Member. You will recall that this morning in the Programming Committee, there was a lengthy discussion on this matter, and the matter that you raise in terms of the rules is surely a matter that you must make a party submission as well to the subcommittee on the review of the rules. The rules that we are currently applying are the new rules that was adopted just before we rose for the elections, and I think that input is an input that should go for broader discussion in the subcommittee on the review of the rules so that there can be proper discussion and further consultation on it. I must also indicate to the House that we do receive regularly reports from the Leader of Government Business on the absence of members who are not members of the executive, who will not be in the House, and whether the Deputy Minister or another minister will take those follow-up questions. And I'm quite sure that we will continue with that practice so that everybody can be informed before the question session start in the afternoon of exactly the availability or non-availability of members of the executive for that specific afternoon's question session. Thank you, Honourable Member. The next item on the order paper is a motion in the name of the Chief Whip of the Majority Party. I now recognize the Honourable the Chief Whip.
Thank you, House Chair. House Chair, we move that this House knows with great sadness the passing of the African National Congress veteran and stalwart, Dr. M A Stofile, on the 15th of August 2016. We further note that at the time of his passing, he was serving as the Chancellor of the University of Fort Hare and Vice President of the World Anti-Doping Agency. And he had recently returned from a diplomatic posting as South Africa's ambassador to Germany. House Chair, this House should further remember that Dr. M A Stofile joined the ANC in 1958 and became a symbol of solidarity, loyalty, and discipline. This House should further remember that he was arrested in 1986 and served an 11-year sentence for terrorism under the then Ciskaian Internal Security Act. This House should also recall that he was elected to the National Executive of the United Democratic Front, UDF, as the regional secretary between 1983 and 1986, and was responsible for the establishment of the UDF front in the border region. The House should further recall that Dr. Stofile was the first ANC chief whip following the democratic elections in 1994 in this House. Served as the provincial chairperson of the ANC in the Eastern Cape in 1996, and later he was appointed as the Premier of the Eastern Cape in 1997. This House should further recognize that he was also deployed
as Minister of Sport and Recreation between 2004 and 2010, and was a member of the 2010 FIFA World Cup Local Organizing Committee Board of Directors. House Chair, this House should further recognize that he held a number of presidential roles for sporting bodies and led from the front in the campaign for non-racial sport and was a committed supporter of anti-doping in sport. This House believes that he made an immeasurable contribution to the liberation of South Africa through politics and sports, and further believes that he was a distinguished freedom fighter and a dedicated servant of the people. And lastly, this House conveys its deepest condolences to his family, friends, relatives, and the African National Congress during this painful and difficult time. I so move.
I now recognize the Honorable Malatsi. Can we just check the sound of the microphone at the podium, please?
Honorable members, let me start by expressing the DA's deepest condolences to Rev M A Stofile's family, his friends, and to our colleagues in the ANC. We hope that his legacy will inspire all of us to uphold our responsibilities for public service with distinction. The loss of any struggle stalwart is just not a loss for your organization, it's a loss for the whole country, and in this case, it's also a loss for sport. I personally never had the privilege of working with the former minister in this portfolio, nor did I meet him. But like any leader of good deeds, his good work in sport transcended generations. It was his activism for non-racialism in sport that made him a unifying figure in the sports community, even when it was unpopular to do so. He was ultimately the athlete sports leader, not the self-serving fat cats that run sports today. And in preparation to speaking today, I spoke to my colleague and a former member of the Portfolio Committee on Sports, Donald Lee, who worked with the minister in his previous terms. And from the anecdotes that he shared with me, he indicated that the former minister respected parliamentary obligations, unlike many ministers on this House today. He appeared before the Portfolio Committee every time he was summoned to, without any of the excuses that some members of the front benches have recently mastered. He answered parliamentary questions promptly and openly without any of the prevaricating trickery of the incumbent. But over and beyond this, what Donald Lee shared with me was that despite the robust engagement, the minister never called opposition MPs nor his critics names whenever they asked difficult questions, because he truly understood the terms of robust engagement. In the era of arrogant sports leaders, Rev M A Stofile was a rare self-serving leader. He did his job effectively without the spectacle of spin that some of the current ministers are using to hide their ineptitude. He was a minister with substance, not some of the intellectual emptiness in some of the benches in cabinet. His conduct on off camera was exemplary of the highest standards of ethical leadership. He never trolled our national teams for poor performance in competitions, because as someone who has played and coached sport at amateur level, he understood that winning and losing are part of the game. He was very magnanimous towards Bafana Bafana when they crashed out of the 2010 World Cup group stages, despite being hosts. He said at the time, and I quote, "We are of course not happy with the fact that we didn't proceed to the next round, but we are equally proud of our boys." That for me is the true measure of a mature political leader. Now contrast that with the infamous bunch of losers on goals scored by the incumbent, and you'll appreciate how a good statesman can make a difference in a portfolio. Because ultimately, sport is about changing lives positively. It is about giving young people opportunities to play whichever sporting code they choose, and providing them with the best facilities to polish their skills. It's about rewarding athletes who perform consistently with fair opportunities, but equally so that they can represent their country with pride. If we can achieve this, we will, and I'll paraphrase the minister, that we will unhackle and kill the myth that black people can only play certain sports because they are black. But in conclusion, I'd like to leave this House with what my former colleague Donald Lee asked me to share with this House, that he had such a cordial relationship with the minister despite their very robust engagements in the portfolio committee, to the extent that when he was hospitalized, he was one of the few members from the ruling party who regularly checked on his well-being when he was admitted to hospital, to the extent that even when he was released, he was the one that went and visited him at his home. And I think all speaks to the manner of that the Deputy President was indicating to earlier, that we can have robust engagement and it can be cordial, but it's also equally incumbent on the executive to lead with example at all times, because members of this side are more than happy to hold that flag at all times. Thank you, Honorable House Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I now call upon the Honourable Malema.
Thank you very much. We want to send our condolences to the Stofile family and to the ANC. Brastoff was one of the most fearless leaders of our struggle, and some of us had an opportunity to serve with him in the National Working Committee and the NEC of the ANC. He always spoke truth to power, and he was never scared to confront the shenanigans of President Zuma. He didn't do so in the press conferences. He told the man directly about how he feels. And he was never one of those people who were begging because they thought they will be promoted if they pretend that they are comfortable with the status quo. Even when we were in the Youth League, Brastoff was never an ageist. It doesn't matter how old he was, we called him Brastoff. And many of the old people of the ANC who are ageist can learn from him. People like Honorable Ngakula, who throws his credentials around and remind people of his MK. That was never Brastoff. He never, when you disagreed with him, reminded you of his credentials and his MK and how many guns he carried. Because he knew that he can convince you even without having to remind you who he was and what are his struggle credentials. He never hesitated to stand with the Youth League, even on controversial issues, because he will say, how can an old person be with young people on issues? We knew he was a reliable force. At all times when we went into the difficult meetings of the ANC, one of the old people we relied on was Brastoff, because old as he was alive to the dynamics of the day and never judged the input of the youth based on their age. Now, Sipho Pichana used a relevant platform to remind us of who Brastoff was. I heard some people saying it was not a relevant platform. A funeral of a politician is always used as imvuselelo. We remind ourselves of who we are, and we remind ourselves of who this person is and what he stood for, and whether we who are remaining behind are living to the expectation of the departed. And therefore, we think that Sipho Pichana raised important issues at a relevant platform, because Brastoff would have said the same thing. When Sipho Pichana spoke, some of us nearly dropped a tear because he spoke the real truth. He might be representing factions in the ANC. That might be an unfortunate thing. But even if he represents factions, truth remains truth, and you will never falter him. We are with him because he did not misrepresent who Brastoff was. Brastoff was exactly what Sipho Pichana was on that day. And we thought we must come here to remind all of you that please listen to Sipho Pichana. I didn't hear you here acknowledging the family of Brastov. Here we are remembering Brastov. His family is not here. It is the same family that rejected President Zuma. And if Zuma had attended that memorial service, it was going to be a distortion of who Brastov was. I salute that family for rejecting a man who disrespected the Constitution, a man who disrespected Brastov, a man who disrespected what Brastov stood for, a man who destroyed the legacy of the generation of Brastov single-handedly. Rest in peace, Brastov. Will continue the fight. Thank you.
The next speaker is the Honorable Buthelezi.
Honorable House Chair, Your Excellency, our Deputy President, Honorable Ministers, Honorable Deputy Ministers, Honorable Members. When I received the news of the passing of Rev M A Stofile, I thought immediately of his beloved wife. How painful this loss has been for Mrs. Nambita Stofile. It is always the family that is most affected. Yet their grieving is done quietly, while our own is broadcasting newspapers, on the radio, and here in Parliament. Let us therefore use these public platforms to honor not only the memory of the great leader, but the sorrow of a family. I had the privilege of serving in our first democratic parliament with the Honorable Reverend Dr. Stofile. We entered the Government of National Unity in 1994, determined to serve our country and strengthen our fledgling democracy. I remember that he served as chief whip of the majority party, the ANC, while I was Minister of Home Affairs, and we worked together as colleagues in the National Assembly. And at once, one could see that the man was actually a very humble servant of the Lord. When President Mbeki appointed him as Minister of Sports and Recreation in 2004, I congratulated him knowing that his experience in governance as Premier of the Eastern Cape would stand him in good stead. Minister Stofile was well educated and a man of faith. It therefore didn't surprise me that he continued to distinguish himself after leaving cabinet in the international arena. I felt a sense of satisfaction earlier this year when the Reverend Stofile was appointed Chancellor of the University of Fort Hare. For years he had teased me, calling me his father-in-law, because Mrs. Nambita Stofile's father and I were at Fort Hare together, not only that, but very close. In fact, we graduated on the same day, and I'm proud that my friend's son-in-law eventually served as Chancellor of our alma mater. Reverend Stofile fulfilled his commitment to serve South Africa. He will remember as one of the first generation of democratic leaders who fought to protect all that we had gained. Our nation owes him a debt of gratitude. He was a man of integrity and a great patriotism. We'll miss the good Reverend. On behalf of the IFP and my own family, I extend my condolences to Mrs. Stofile and her family and to his mother. My sympathies also go to the University of Fort Hare, to the party he served, the ANC, with such commitment, and to the many who, like us, are mourning his loss. May our former minister rest in peace. Aroba leka kgotso.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Mabika.
Honourable House Chair, members of this Honourable House. The late Reverend Makenkesi Stofile was a man of talent, of many talents, who has left a huge footprint on political landscape in South Africa. He was an esteemed erudite scholar, a devoted man of God, a committed political activist, a very capable sport administrator, and above all, a loving family man. As NFP, we extend our sincere condolences to his bereaved family who are coming to terms with the loss of a husband and a father, and to the ANC, who have lost a loyal cadre. We pray that you will find a solace and comfort in the knowledge of that South Africa has benefited immensely from his contribution towards our democracy, and that his legacy will live on the memories of all who had been touched by his generosity and commitment to a better South Africa for all. May his soul rest in everlasting peace. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I now recognize the Honourable Fultane.
Honourable Speaker, I protested when the Deputy President wanted to leave the House when I go into the floor. Today we pay a well-deserved tribute to a great son and servant of our people whose remains were laid to rest by thousands of South Africans 7 days ago. Stof dedicated his entire life to the people of South Africa. As an academic, he imparted huge volumes of knowledge, skill, and expertise to all those who crossed his path, both formally and informally. As a politician, a freedom fighter, and a religious leader, he dedicated his life to the service of the people, in particular the poor and vulnerable, who are locked in far outskirts of the rural hinterland. In the world of sport, and as a dedicated sports practitioner, he fought tirelessly for the integration and total transformation of this important sector for the benefit of all South Africans. I know his footsteps, as I personally experienced this when I was president of the Transkei Rugby Football Union. He was an embodiment of the caliber of leaders that is desperately needed today in order to drive the nations to propel the transformation agenda to greater heights. His outstanding work as the first chief whip of our democratic parliament bears fruits today. As a straight talker, he certainly laid firm bases for the acknowledgement and respect of the regulatory framework that governs all stakeholders of this House. Indeed, Stof made a great contribution, not only to the attainment of our constitutional democracy, but also to the deepening and consolidation of democratic values and systems. His outstanding moral integrity, great sense of love, loyalty to the nation, humility, and upholding the values of unity and selfless service to the most vulnerable communities is a lesson that all leaders should emulate. He may be dead and buried, but his footsteps will never dry up, for we owe him an indelible debt of gratitude. To his wife, Sis Nambita, the children, isizwe sothahla nodlangamandla, sithi nathi masitsho ukuba akuhlanga lungehlanga. Thuthuzelekani. Nxe. Linxeba lesizwe eli lophayo. Lala ngoxolo. Thahla. Kandayi. Olwakho ugqatso ulufezile. Enkosi.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Nchaisa.
Thank you very much, Honourable House Chair. Unfortunately, I lost my reading spectacles, so I'm going to read it difficult today. As the AIC, we convey our heartfelt condolences to the family of the late Rev M A Stofile. The loss that the family has suffered is also our loss. Comrade Stofile was a man of integrity. He was honest, always determined, transparent, and accountable. He was a great leader, a sportsman, a coach, a priest, a politician, and loved his people. His leadership qualities always remain as a good example to many. He contributed a lot to the freedom of this country. Therefore, the words of William Shakespeare do not apply here. I quote, the evil that men do lives after them, and the good is often entered with their bones, unquote. So let it not be with Comrade Stofile. So these words now do not apply. We should remember him for the good that he did for the country. However, he could not have lived forever. Death is a necessary end. It's just a contract that is not renewable. Knowing well the family members of Stofile that you are not alone in this suffering. be comforted and feel good. We should always remember this great man of Africa. He did a lot for the country. May his soul rest in peace. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Binda.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Let me take this opportunity on behalf of the PAC to convey our heartfelt condolences to the people of this country, friends, comrades, and the family of the late Comrade Makengesi Stofile. It is time of death when human beings come to their senses and begin to define the life and our purpose of existence. Comrade Stofile's name has always been a familiar one around the circle of activism in the country, including in the early 80s during the time of UDF. And he worked with comrades like Ohitsa, Siwisa, and many others. My personal encounter with the late was during his 40 days when political fightings between the PAC student wing and the ANC student wing were rife. At the time we met, there was a few of our PASO comrades who were shot, allegedly by the ANC comrades organized by the late. Even in this trying time filled with anger and rivalry, he remained the man that everyone here is describing him to be. Hence, we were able to overcome the challenges we faced at that time, despite the casualties that we both incurred. When Comrade Stoff was appointed Premier of the Eastern Cape, we once worked in the same circles, as I was a deputy chair of the PAC in the Eastern Cape under Umkhabile. And one other contribution he made to the PAC that I think it's worth mentioning is when he assisted us with securing the release of a considerable number of our ex-APLA comrades against the lack of political will from his organization. With his assistance, we managed to help a number of our comrades to reunite with their families. The late conversation we had for more than an hour, it was before the death of Utatu Makwetu, when Comrade Stoff made a request to senior cadres of the PAC to accompany him because he wanted to visit him when he was too ill. Our arrangements, of course, were outpaced by the passing of Comrade Umakwetu before we could see him. It was also Comrade Stoff who even advised me that we must request a state funeral for Utatu Makwetu. And he even assured me that he will talk to his comrades in government. Comrade Stoff, he also told me that he regrets recommending the tracking device that is given, more especially to politicians.
Your time is up.
As it was his recommendation to government, because he got that from Germany. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Minister, Small Business.
Honorable Honorable Chairperson. Sorry.
Order, Honorable Member.
Yeah, just rise on a point of order. Sorry to distract the Honorable Minister. I know this is quite a serious debate. But on my screen here, I noticed a photograph of a lovely lady with black hair. And I'm not saying that the Honorable Minister is not a lovely lady, but I think they need to correct the picture on the screen here.
Thank you, Honorable Member.
Thank you.
I will take note of that. Honorable Minister, you can proceed.
Thank you very much, House Chair. I am honored on behalf of the African National Congress and on behalf in particular of the thousands of Umkhonto weSizwe cadres who had the opportunity to be visited by the late Reverend Makengesi Stofile in the camps. And I, with pride, stand here and say, I was one of those cadres that had to listen to him and hear him speak about where the struggle in South Africa was when we in the camps were dying to also go back home. Today, we honor homage to a great life lived with no inhibitions and no pretensions. His love for the truth set him on an arduous road to a Christian calling and priesthood as a minister of the Presbyterian Church. And in time, his love for the truth would merge with his love for his people. It would set him on a dangerous path that led him to joining the African National Congress and working tirelessly with its many internal structures, including the United Democratic Front, which he helped to establish in 1983. His love for sport sent him on a rugby field as a scrum half at an early age, later to graduate as an accomplished rugby administrator, a position he used to effectively fight racism in sport. As a lecturer, teacher, and scholar, Reverend Stofile was able to live his life through his ideas, empowering his students with truth and truth-seeking tools of analysis. And this we also saw when he was a chancellor who, at the time that he passed on, he was doing exactly that. Many of our generations owe understanding and the place we occupy to his determination to impart knowledge. A life lived with such great intensity and haste in all its attainments of human endeavor does not lend itself to a simple tribute. A life richly lived after distinguishing itself beyond the many measures of mankind in itself is a great story, a great lesson, and a great symbol to cherish and behold. Reverend Stofile's quest for ensuring better governance and delivery on the promises made to his people saw him accepting the honor to serve as a Premier of the Eastern Cape, a position he held with distinction. The ANC's faith and confidence in him allowed them to entrust the safeguard of its finances to him, a task he performed with distinction. What more could we ask of him? What more assignments could we put on his broad shoulders that he could not perform? He started his time in the democratic dispensation as the chief whip of the ANC, a very difficult time for us all. We had to adjust to the norms and decorum of Parliament and adjust to living our commitment to the liberation struggle in everything we did in Parliament. Very often, because Parliament had not contemplated people like us, he bore the brunt of frustration, even our anger of having only one toilet to cater for us women here, something that today is taken for granted. This is what we found in this house. Our anger at Parliament not having facilities for those who had young children. Our anger over the fact that the definition of Parliament, for example, over family, did not apply to us as African people. The list is endless, and he absorbed all this frustration and solved them. He was a man who could listen and empathize with everyone's situation. The queues in front of his office were very long, and we do not know how he was able to balance his responsibilities of looking after his family and being a chief whip. We loved him dearly, and he was able to give back that love in abundance. He had the ability to make each of us feel very special to him, and at times instill the kind of discipline that the struggle had forged in him. He bore the scars of his years in prison with grace. At his funeral, it was heartbreaking to hear the story of his neighbors, of how the apartheid state brutalized his family. Working as chief whip with whips of other parties, you would never know what he had had to go through. Reverend Stofile was a disciplined cadre of the African National Congress. This meant that within 2 years of relocating to Cape Town as chief whip, he was requested by the ANC to return to the Eastern Cape to become the premier of that province, a position he held with dignity and serving with distinction, while at the same time conducting his responsibilities as Treasurer General of the African National Congress. In one life, he lived many others. He was illustrious and exemplary in many respects. Of all the defining features of his life, he was utter humility. There was no air of pomp and superiority about him. He was a down-to-earth and salt of the earth kind of a human being. It was his humility that made him a great willing servant of the people. It was his humility that forced him to lasting relation with his students, friends, fellow comrades, diplomats, and fellow worshippers. He was a painstaking in his work, courteous in his demeanor, and frank and open in the expression of his views. He was a public servant of note and an accomplished administrator. We are told that at his funeral, he was not such an inspirational preacher. In fact, he was called a lousy preacher with monotonous voice, but a man of deep, profound belief. For him, it was the message, not the delivery. He replaced charisma with conviction and truth. He replaced populism with determination. He replaced pomp with devotion and timeless affinity to the struggle for freedom. The essence of his life came from a profound conviction of a necessity and legitimacy of the fight to fight justice and freedom for all. His leadership was infectious, and that permeated and influenced many people. Our remarkable things about Stoff is his ability to learn from the people. He spent a great deal of time listening to them, interacting and trying to find solutions to the many challenges that confront us. Even his political life, the ANC, especially during his tenure as Premier of the Eastern Cape, he spent more time interacting with the branches of the African National Congress. He was the man on the ground and followed to the letter every politically important message of linking, understanding, and staying with the masses. He remained humble till the end, refusing to succumb to glamour of office or station in life. Shakespeare is reputed to have said, "Some are born great, some achieve greatness, some have greatness thrust upon them." Reverend achieved greatness, but refused to be intoxicated by it. Within the last few weeks of his life, he came face to face with his own mortality. He was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and he called for more to come to him in hospital and enjoyed what to expect of his period of his life, because my own brother had died of pancreatic cancer years ago. After a brief discussion on the matter, he indicated that he was not ready to die because he had so much to live for. He had so much he thought he needed to fix. He had so much love to give and so many people to thank. He has left such a huge imprint on the canvas of our political landscape that is nearly impossible to give credit to this humble giant of the struggle in time allocated. But in closing, far beyond what was captured by the media around his death is the simple fact that he loved the people of this country, and if he had had time, he would have spent the rest of his life telling them how much he had loved them and how grateful he was he had had the opportunity to lead the country into new dispensation. Lizalise idinga lakho, Thixo Nkosi yenyaniso, zonke inhlanga, zonke izizwe, mazizuze usindo, bona izwe lakokwethu. I thank you.
Thank you very much, honorable members. That concludes the speakers list on this matter. I take it that there are no objections to the motion being adopted. Motion adopted. Will members please rise to observe a moment of silence in memory of Dr. Makenkesi Arnold Stofile. May we be seated. The presiding officers associate themselves with the motion. The condolences of the House will be conveyed to the Stofile family. Honorable members, as you can see on your order paper, we are supposed to have motions without notice, member statements, and motions. Earlier today, the National Assembly Program Committee unanimously agreed in terms of Rule 208, subsection E, that there will be no motions without notice today. This is meant to enable the Rules Committee on Tuesday next week to consider the concerns raised in relation to motions without notice. And I'm sure that all parties were informed of this decision by the program committee. We now move to the members' statements. Does any member of the ANC wish to make a statement? Yes, honorable member.
Thank you, Chair. The ANC commends the building of the state-of-the-art dairy parlor, which stands to benefit about 400 households in the Mandusini near Port St. John's in the Eastern Cape. This project forms part of the department's One Household, 1 Hectare program, through which households are allocated a 1 hectare portion of land to produce crops. This project is aimed at eradicating poverty and creating smallholder farmers, producers, and agro-manufacturers, and it targets state-owned and traditional communal land. Beneficiaries can plant and produce vegetables on state-allocated hectares of land, and the harvest is to repeat to stop food security. Each household will also receive 2 dairy cattle, which will contribute to the production of dairy products. The cattle will help to sustain the dairy parlor. The ANC views this project as in line with its policy of continuing to invest more in rural development through further implementation of comprehensive rural development program, which focuses primarily on the provision of social and economic rural infrastructure. This project should be extended to other
Thank you,
rural
honorable
areas.
member. Your time is up.
Thank
the
you.
Democratic Alliance.
Thank you, House Chair. When Eskom appeared before the Portfolio Committee of Public Enterprises yesterday, they told us that they were now in a situation that energy supply could be regarded as stable. This raised important questions, including why then the rushed nuclear site program bypassing correct gazetting procedures, and why the insistence that nuclear was the only other option. Eskom also gave no clear explanation for refusing to engage with independent power producers. Given attempts by President Jacob Zuma to capture our state-owned entities, Gupta family-linked companies have become the source of much concern after awarding of contracts by Eskom worth millions, if not billions of rands. Even more worrying were the utterances made by Eskom CEO Brian Molefe regarding his relationship with the Gupta family, and I quote, "I've met them, and actually, when I look at them, I don't think there's anything wrong with them." When there is turmoil and serious uncertainty, when companies are pulling out of the South African economy due to obvious patronage, and when lending to state-owned entities is drying up, it is no joking matter. We now look to Minister Lynn Brown to come out of hiding and take control of state-owned entities and give positive assurances to the country that no family, no member of government, and no one will be able to control state-owned entities for the benefit of anyone other than for the people of South Africa.
The Economic Freedom Fighters.
Thank you, House Chair. The FF notes the unspeakable treatment of EFF councillors in Bizana, Engobo, King Sabata Dalinjebo, Enguza Hill municipalities, OR Tambo District Municipality, and other council in the Eastern Cape who were removed from the council for wearing workers' uniform. Security guards of Mbizana assaulted, humiliated, and removed 90-year-old EFF councillor, Utata Umtutuzeli Spellman from Chambers, Anina Mahloni, ANC. A father, a grandfather, a great-grandfather, and a respectable leader of a community. Shame, ANC. In Buffalo City Metro, newly elected Council Speaker Alfred Mtsi called law enforcement officers some carrying guns to remove EFF councillors from chambers. EFF councillors were asked to leave the chamber because their overalls and helmets were not formally clothing, as required by the council rules, which is not true. Yet the rules do not specify which items are formal and which one are not formal. Elected speaker in various municipalities witness how the speaker and presiding officer here in this parliament are assaulting members of EFF, calling police and bouncers to remove us while we are not here as per your invite, but by voted by EFF members.
Your time is up.
So, Minister, we can special minister, we must attend to this before EFF.
Thank you,
attend to these people of yours there in those municipalities.
Honorable member, thank you. ANC.
South Africa to get 163 sexual offense courtrooms. The ANC welcomes the commitment by the Department of Justice in opening 163 sexual offences courtrooms countrywide. This demonstrates the seriousness of our government in bringing access to justice. The upgrading of regional courts into sexual offences court is progressing very well. The ministerial task team that was established in 2013 to consider the adjudication of sexual offences stipulated that the department should establish 57 such courts by 2016. This is a phase 1 of the sexual offences court project, and the second phase should see 106 regional courts becoming sexual offences courts. By 2017-18, the department will have 163 sexual offences courtrooms operating. Some of the most common queries that are entertained in this courtroom include child maintenance and the administration of estates, domestic violence and sexual violence encompasses on the agenda. ANC commends the role played by the Department of Justice in educating, empowering women, especially in rural areas, about justice services and procedures. This court will spread over
Honorable
rural,
member,
semi-urban, and urban communities.
The
I
IFP.
thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. It is no wonder that Future Growth Asset Management have decided not to provide further funding to some state-owned enterprises. The oversight and control of SOEs by government leaves a great deal to be desired. It would seem, however, that there is now a scramble within government for control of SOEs, and by this I am referring to President Zuma's recent cabinet lekotla, where the president announced that he himself would chair a new presidential state-owned entities coordinating committee, which would, and I quote, provide President Zuma line of sight on strategic decisions and interventions to create SOEs that play a transformative role in a capable developmental state, close quote. The recent spat between National Treasury and Eskom, where the Minister of Public Enterprises had to intervene to direct Eskom to respond to National Treasury on a 172-page report, does not help in restoring credibility or good governance. What is required is a credible and sustainable framework to deal with governance issues and the relationship with SOEs and their boards of management with the shareholder. Allied to this is the need to encourage and open up investment by the private sector in SOEs. Thank you.
Freedom Front Plus.
Achtbare voorzitter, in 'n land wil almal hê dat dit ekonomies moet goed gaan. Want as dit ekonomies goed gaan, dan is almal voorspoedig. Daar is 'n hele paar instellings en faktore wat 'n rol speel om te bepaal of 'n land ekonomies welvaart skep. Een van die aspekte is dat daar kredietgraderings is wat toegepas word op 'n land en sy regering. Standard & Poor het uitdruklik gesê dat een van die groot faktore om te bepaal of Suid-Afrika afgegradeer gaan word na rommelstatus is die bestuur van sy staatsinstellings. Nou kom die agbare president, hy stel 'n koördinerende raad saam waaroor hy beheer kry van hierdie staatsinstellings. Nou kom Future Growth en hulle sê ons gaan nie meer geld leen aan instellings soos Eskom, Transnet, Sanral, selfs die Nywerheidsontwikkelingsbank van Suid-Afrika. Daar is ook 'n Deense bank wat nou na vore getree het en gesê het maar hy gaan ook nie verder geld leen aan Eskom nie. Agbare voorsitter, as Suid-Afrika en die regering ernstig is dat ons ekonomiese voorspoed begin lei, dan vra die Vryheidsfront Plus gryp in. Net, ek sê net, die ANC kan van president Zuma ontslae raak. Gryp in en raak ontslae van hom, dat ons ekonomiese vooruitgang kan kry. Ek dank u.
ANC. Honourable Member.
Thank you, House Chair. The ANC welcomes the funding, the handing over of 10 boreholes to the Alfred Nzo municipality at Ramafule village, which is under the Matatiele local municipality, by the Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, Des van Rooyen, and the Eastern Cape Cocta, MEC Fikile Xhasa. The project is important for communities because one borehole at Ramafule will supply water to a population of 2,508 that has 469 households, yielding 1.25 liters per second. The project of providing communities with water through the boreholes is the initiative of Municipal Infrastructure Support Agent, which is under COCTA. The ANC is of the view that this intervention of assisting with boreholes will go a long way in providing relief to the communities who are already experiencing the negative impact of drought. And many of these interventions are directly implemented across the country to assist in the upliftment of the lives of South African citizens. I thank you.
ACDP. ACDP. ANC.
Thank you, Chairperson. The ANC is committed at improving quality education and eliminating disparities. As such, welcomes the handing over of a newly built Langa High School, which is situated in Belgrade, Pongola in KwaZulu-Natal. The school has, among others, 25 classrooms, 8 special classrooms, a media center, a computer center, science and life sciences laboratories, and an electrical technology workshop, a consumer studies class, sport facilities, and a kitchen. Langa High School is also one of many schools that the ANC government is building and refurbishing in the province. As recently, 2 new schools were opened, one in Jozini, worth 34 million, and another newly renovated school in Eshowe to the value of 10.5 million. The ANC believes that the investment in the school shows that its government in KwaZulu-Natal is serious about developing the standard of education as well as education infrastructure in that province, and that is commendable. I thank you.
Order, Chair. Just a clarity. Who
What's
was
the
that
point of
member?
order?
Because I can't remember her. Is she a member of
Honourable
Parliament or-
Member, that's not a point of order. Democratic Alliance. Over to you, Member.
Honourable House Chair, Minister Gordhan in his March budget speech clearly laid down 3 steps that were needed for SAA. These were the strengthening of the board, engaging with equity partners, and merging SAA with SA Express. None of these have yet been achieved. Since then, Mnyeni and her board have simply ignored Minister Gordhan and all warnings. They have continued to run SAA to the brink of liquidation. Mnyeni and her board have failed to publish annual financial statements for 2 years, apparently allowed SAA to run at billions of rands, losses estimated at 11 billion rand for the last 2.25 years, suspended officials such as Bosch, Mshe, and Stimple simply because they attempted to stop corruption, embarked on the BNP funding debacle, put SAA at risk of losing lucrative routes. There can be no rational basis for maintaining Mnyeni and others on the SAA board. The DA remains of the view that SAA must be placed under business rescue and new and competent directors approved. Thank you.
ANC.
Thank you, House Chair. The launch of a smart ID card online system by the Department of Home Affairs 4 months ago was a smart move and is already bearing fruits. This was done in order to improve service delivery and shorten queues at the Home Affairs offices. 50% of the smart IDs and passport application has been finalized already. The system is now open to all citizens who bank with Absa, FNB, Nedbank, and Standard Bank, with 12 branches of these banks connected to the system in Gauteng and Cape Town. The ANC urges all citizens of South Africa, except for the first-time applicants for IDs, to use Home Affairs conveniently to apply for smart IDs, cards, and passport. The department aims to replace about 34 million green barcoded IDs book with smart cards and has already issued 5.2 million cards. ANC commends Home Affairs Department on moving from a paper process to a complete dignified service. Thank you, sir.
PAC.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On daily basis, it becomes clearer and clearer that as things change, they actually remain the same. Apartheid remains alive and well in this country. At Robertson Winery, Western Cape, as we speak, the workers have now been pushed into a corner and forced to fight for their rights by way of withholding their labor. How can it be that people in this day and age can be earning between 2.9 and 3,500 a month and be denied a living wage? What is absurd of this whole situation is that the workers are expected from the little that they are earning to finance their own cost of travel to workplace and are further required to pay for part of their uniforms. Beside their financial aspects, the labor practices at Robertson are designed and stripping the workers of their dignity and self-respect. How can Anton Silias, the CEO of Robertson Winery, be honestly heard to be justifying a salary increase of about 217, and when the workers are simply asking for 8,500? According to the stats from South African wine industry, information and system, this country nearly 100,000 hectares of vineyards, mainly in the Western Cape. They account for 3% wine production. The issue of Robertson Winery workers' strike should be viewed in light of general state of workers in the country.
The ANC.
The ANC is shocked by the City Council's secret approval of almost 7 million rands in golden handshake for 2 of its executives, at the time when such resources are needed for service delivery, especially for black community areas. ANC views these terminations as unnecessary and unwarranted, as these 2 executives have performed very well and have received glowing performance evaluations which are part of public record. It's even worse that the matter was discussed secretly by a party that is purported to be upholding values of good governance, transparency, and prudent financial management and accountability. The South Africans can now see the DA of what it is, the party that does not care to spend money on development of marginalized community of Western Cape, but on wasteful spending on unnecessary things. I thank you.
The Democratic Alliance.
Thank you, Madam House Chair. The decisions by local investment group Future Growth Asset Management and Jyske Bank of Denmark to withhold loans to state-owned enterprises come as a hammer blow to our already embattled economy. The decisions are hardly surprising, given the fact that recent Auditor General reports and research results show that the majority of state-owned enterprises are on the brink of liquidation. This is a direct result of mismanagement, corruption, and cadre deployment, and represents a huge vote of no confidence in President Jacob Zuma. It would be imprudent, if not totally reckless, for any fund manager to risk his clients' money in ventures that show no prospects of a return on the investments, or worse, a total loss of the investment. If this trend is followed by other financial institutions, this government will be in serious trouble, because sources of government borrowings will be severely restricted and more onerous. This decision will also heighten the risk of a credit ratings downgrade and a further fall in the value of the rand. This in turn will precipitate a reduction in economic activity and further substantial job losses. It is time that all in this country who wish to have a prosperous future for themselves and their children realized that South Africa can no longer afford to have Jacob Zuma as its president. The only viable alternative is a DA-led government. Thank you.
The ANC. ANC.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The ANC will ensure that all South Africans have access to adequate human settlement and their equality living conditions. And it is therefore pleased by the delivery of the rolling out of 300 decent new houses to decent beneficiary of Ngobiza Extension 5 in Etwata, Ekuru Lane. The house consists of 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, 1 plain kitchen, and 1 lodge. The houses give residents some dignity, as they are now proudly homeowners of decent houses. Moreover, these houses project senior citizens, people living with disabilities, and children-headed houses are priorities. The ANC commends this project and believes that it will add value to the commitment of the providing 1 million houses, opportunity of quality houses in urban and rural settlement over the next 5 years. I thank you, Madam Chair.
This brings us to the conclusion of the member statement. Are there any ministerial responses? I've noted Motsecha, Oliphant, Davis, Van Rooyen, Quinty, thank you very much. I didn't know that we had a new minister, Honorable Kaula, on the other side. Thank you very much. I will ask Honorable Mtecha to respond.
Thank you, Chair. The one I really want to comment on is the input which was made by the member from the ANC around school infrastructure. And Chair can say that indeed as a sector we are concerned on an ongoing basis about the state of our infrastructure in schools, and that's why we're doing all we can to make sure that we can meet our norms and standards that we have published and have committed ourselves publicly. And I can say, working with our provinces, we have committed ourselves that by 2016 we should have done with the first phase of the norms and standards, which really look at your fencing, sanitation, and water. Can share also with the House that to date, on inappropriate structure, which is in support of ongoing work by provinces, we've already built almost 162 schools, and 126 of them being in the Eastern Cape. We've done 11 schools in the Free State. We've done 3 in KZN and Limpopo. We've done 2 in Mpumalanga, 1 in Northwest, and we've done 21 schools in the Western Cape. And as I say, we're working very hard to ensure that indeed we don't only fast track your basic infrastructure, because for us, schools are not only learning spaces, but they're also about our children's dignity and our teachers' dignity, their safety, but more important, also our attitude to our learners. So thank you very much for the comment. And as I say, we are committed to making sure that we can do all we can to improve our school infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Oliphant.
Thank you, House Chair. House Chair, I'm going to respond on the issue that was raised by Honorable Mbinda. Just to indicate that as we speak, in the wineries industry, there are negotiations that are continuing that are led by FAO. And I believe that the issues that he has raised, including the working conditions of those workers, is part of the bargaining issues. And therefore, it will be proper that we wait for the finalization of those negotiations. But at the same time, I just want to advise the honorable member that when he comes across those issues, he has to advise the workers, because in terms of the Labor Relations Act and the Basic Conditions of the Employment Act, those are the legislation that sets the working conditions of the workers, and that includes the clothing for the workers, and therefore, rather than for the workers just to go on strike, they have to refer those issues to the CCMA, because they have the legal legislation that will force the employers to implement exactly what they are supposed to do. Thank you very much, House Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Davis.
Thank you, House Chairperson. I think it's worth trying to clarify, because it's the subject of a lot of understanding, what was the decision of the Cabinet Lekgotla on the structure that was going to oversee the performance of state-owned companies. It was not that everything is being transferred under the single responsibility of the President on his own. Rather, the model was similar to the Presidential Infrastructure Coordinating Council. There is a process going on led by the Deputy President at the moment on state-owned enterprises, state-owned companies, but that's something that's looking at the immediate situation and what needs to happen there. What the decision of the Cabinet Lekgotla was that we needed a longer-term running structure that oversees the functioning of state-owned companies along the lines and along the model of the Presidential Infrastructure Coordination Council, which would bring together a number of ministers as well as the Deputy President in a body that would oversee a more efficient functioning of state-owned companies. I think the PICC has shown its mettle in this regard, and I think that that is the decision that we took, not some sinister plot, as I think that one of the interpellers was suggesting. Thank you very much.
Honorable Van Rooyen.
Thank you, House Chair. Our constitution confines the legislative and executive authority of a municipality in each and every municipal council. The constitution is very clear. Section 151 is very clear on that. What does that mean? It then means municipalities are entitled to develop procedures to address issues of governance of municipalities in their respective constituencies, including development of bylaws to deal with dress codes. But that doesn't imply they should do that without considering the provision of the national and provincial legislation. So before the elections, proactively so, SALGA developed guidelines guiding municipalities on development of the rules for respective municipal councils. Now, I'm happy that I've received a correspondence officially from the EFF, besides the submission that have been made now in the House, about municipalities where they are citing incidents of violence or forceful removal of their members from municipal council. Now, we'll have to check exactly what happened in those municipalities for us to provide an appropriate response. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Nkwinti.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, I thank the Honorable Member from the ANC about Mantusini. That program is a dynamic program, one household, two Derrick House. We have got about 400 households in the area, so we've been given up to much to ensure that each one of them has got that capacity. It's a direct response to the United Nations finding that in South Africa, there's no shortage of food as such, but it's nutritious, it's safe, and it's food safety, security, and nutrition. We're responding to that. But I want to respond to the other question about SAA. It is not correct to say that or to suggest that the President takes a decision about the board of the SAA. It's not correct. It is a responsibility of Cabinet in terms of the memorandum of cooperation. So it is not correct. Cabinet is seized with the matter. is going to make going to make an announcement soon. We're dealing with the matter. And lastly, Honorable Chair, it is unfortunate that when we talk about downgrading, we talk about divestment, like future growth, as the case is now, that the members of the opposition, particularly the DA, they see this thing as an opportunity to actually get into on the bandwagon, attack South Africa. Because when you talk about negatively in the manner that you do, you're actually encouraging the downgrading. That's what you are inviting. It is absolutely clear in our mind that you are not loyal to the Republic of South Africa.
Order.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Point
The
of
time
order.
is up. Honorable Steenhuisen, what's the point
Point
of order?
House Chair, as you would know, when we stand in this House to be sworn in as members of Parliament, in terms of the Constitution, we swear loyalty to the Republic of South Africa and the Constitution. I think it is unparliamentary without a substantive motion for the member to say that members on this side of the House are unpatriotic to the Republic of South Africa. I would ask that he withdraws that. It's not South Africa that we're blaming. It's their inept, useless government that we're behaving.
Order, honorable member. I would receive advice on the matter and then be able to respond to you. This concludes ministerial responses. We now come to the last item. Yes, honorable member.
There's an issue that came from the member statement about the SAA, which is very urgent. And the issue that we raised earlier with the Deputy President about the presence of ministers here is critical. You've got an SAA which is in the market looking for 16 billion rands. There's 2 members of the board remaining there. There's no guidance of what is happening about SAA. And we're not giving any response by the executive of people who are running down an entity which is going to cause inconvenience, not only for those who travel, but generally it's going to cause chaos in terms of it being a collapsed institution. And we need accountability on what is happening in SAA, and no one is here to give us a response. Can someone tell us what is happening in SAA?
Thank you, honorable member.
So that we are able to find direction.
Honorable member, as you know that on ministerial statements, those ministers who want to respond raise their hands, and they've done so. And we've noted the issue you've raised, and I'm sure the Deputy President equally has. We now come to the last item on the order paper, which is the notices of motion. Does any member of the ANC wish to give a notice of motion? Honorable member.
Thank you, House Chair. I move on behalf of the African National Congress that in its next sitting, the House debates ways to advance rural development, land and agrarian reform, and food security. I thank you.
Thank you, the DA. Honorable member.
Thank you, Chairperson. I wish to use this opportunity to read a draft resolution. Chairperson, I hereby give notice that I shall move at the next sitting that the House, noting the serious allegations of the close ties between the Gupta family and President Zuma, establish an ad hoc committee to investigate the alleged involvement of the Gupta family in the capture of state resources and undue influence over the executive, with the following terms of reference for the investigation. A, that during the inquiry, specific attention is paid to the circumstances surrounding the purchase of the Optimum coal mine by the Gupta-owned Tegeta Exploration and the subsequent contract awarded to Tegeta Exploration by Eskom. 2, the involvement of members of the Gupta family in the appointment process of executive members' positions, with specific reference to the following allegations. The acknowledgement...
Honorable member, I'm sure you'd forward the rest of the resolution. The time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. EFF.
Thank you, House Chair. I rise on behalf of the economic freedom fighters that in its next sitting, the House debates and finds solution on the plight of domestic workers, in particular sexual harassment and the long working hours without pay. I so move.
Thank you, the ANC.
Thank you, House Chair. I move on behalf of the ANC that in its next sitting, the House debates the strengthening of support for strugglers for national self-determination and multilateral approach to the management of global issues. I thank you.
Thank you, the IFP.
Thank you very much, Honourable House Chairperson. I hereby give notice that I shall move on behalf of the IFP that this House, at its next sitting, debate the need to urgently compel President Zuma to fulfill his pledge made in his 2011 State of the Nation address to provide free sanitary products to vulnerable schoolgirls who cannot afford them, for a failure to do so will continue to deny these young women their dignity and their constitutional rights to education. Thank you.
Thank you, NFP.
Thank you, Chairperson. I move on behalf of the NFP that on its next sitting, this House debates the policy uncertainty challenge in the economic growth of South Africa. Thank you.
Thank you, the ANC.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move on behalf of the ANC that in its next sitting, the House debates Black Industrialist Scheme to promote the participation of Black entrepreneurs in manufacturing. Thank you.
Thank you, UDM.
Sorry. Thank you, House Chair. Youth unemployment remains a major crisis facing South Africa today. In fact, more than half of the economically active South African youth are unemployed, which is a damning indictment of all the economic policies we have adopted since 1994. In light of this, I hereby move on behalf of the UDM that at its next sitting, the House debates the need to extend and refine the current youth wage subsidy in order to create jobs for youth in South Africa. I so move.
Thank you. Freedom Front Plus. The Democratic Alliance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that at its next sitting, this House debates efforts by the Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries to ensure that previously disadvantaged people in the sector are no longer on the outside looking in, but become economically active and involved in the value chain of agriculture, forestry and fisheries. I so move.
Thank you, ANC.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, House Chair.
Order, Honourable Member, the lady was the one I pointed, yes.
I move on behalf of the ANC that in its next sitting, the House debates mechanism to accelerate the rollout and expansion of aquaculture projects so as to enhance job creation as well as promote access to high-protein food. I so move.
Thank you, Cope. Cope. ACDP. ANC. Honourable Member.
Thank you, House Chair. I move on behalf of the ANC that in its next sitting, the House debates promotion of community engagement to enable communities to provide feedback. I so move.
Thank you, AIC.
Thank you very much, Honourable House Chair. I move on behalf of the AIC that this House in its next meeting debates the role that traditional leaders should play in the development of their areas in cooperation with the local council to promote public participation and therefore strengthen democracy. I so move.
Thank you, Ahang SA. ANC.
I move on behalf of the African National Congress that in its next sitting, the House debates rural safety strategy to deal with the safety and security of rural communities, in particular farm workers and farm dwellers. I so move.
Thank you, APC. PAC.
I don't have.
DA.
Thank you, Chair.
I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that at its next sitting, this House debates, and I quote, Nomvula Mokenyane, Watergate, close quote, and the Minister's involvement in the alleged awarding of certain tenders at the Lesotho Highlands Water Project Phase 2. The delay of this project and the effect that it may have on Gauteng with a shortage of water by 2018. I so move.
ANC.
I hereby moving on behalf of the ANC that in its next sitting, the House debates the implementation of the school safe programs to ensure the learners' well-being, as well as combating the violence incidents, including abuse of learners within and outside the schools. I so move.
The ANC. The DA. Thank you very much. I wanted to know that you are alert and you know the new rules. I actually looked at both sides of the House, the ANC and the DA and EFF, all of them are looking, what is now the presiding officer doing? Thank you very much, honorable members. This concludes notices of motion and the end of business for the day. The House is adjourned.